Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Green Dragon podcast. We have the delight of Jonathan Wrench joining us tonight.
Good to be back.
Exciting news. He's going to be a new co-host of the show. So we're going to have some pretty awesome conversations coming up. We're lining those up now at the moment, but it's an honor to have him back on. And tonight's really fun because we have the fire and a delicious charcuterie board set up here, and we'll probably break into the bourbon as time goes on.
Yeah, I'm not being sponsored by Noble Oak Double Oak Bourbon. But if they want to start sponsoring this podcast, we are certainly open to that. So yeah, I know I swear I just put the bottle down with the label facing the camera, but yeah, I don't want to be like a host on a talent show. You know, they got the Coca-Cola, you know what I mean? It's always lined up perfectly with the camera. So yeah.
Oh yeah, I definitely would not turn down a sponsorship.
Yeah. So what's new?
Well, business related, uh, just trying to reach out to customers for the main project, and the company aspect of Lifeline, which is just getting patriotic businesses to sign up, and
Mm,
we're this close to getting the marketplace set up where we can have people sell directly on the website.
okay.
So with that coming up, we hope that will drive more traffic to the podcast and stuff. So
Right. Right.
um outside of that, nothing too wild. Aiden and Jake had to kind of take a break because their work schedules are getting pretty full. So they're doing every other week or so
Uh-huh.
podcast. So
Yeah.
thought it
No,
was yeah.
this was your brainchild, right? I mean, this is you've been the one really being the energy behind this whole project. Is that right?
A lot of it, yeah. So I've brought almost every guest has been from me.
Okay.
We had a few from Aiden. He was the one who came up with the idea for the podcast.
Hmm.
And then I was like, that's a great idea. So I was just trying to find the best ways to expand it,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
bring people on. So
Yeah. No, I mean, there's so many. I mean, just in Fremont County, I mean, 39,000 people in Fremont County, but so small county by every measure, but so many interesting people. You know, you can't really come to Wyoming without meaning to, you know what I mean? Like you have to be sort of intentional to find our little desert island out in the middle of the prairie. So,
you really do.
yeah. So I think in that way, we end up often with, so many people with interesting stories,
Mm-hmm.
right? People who really enjoy being off the beaten path. And I think by definition, those people usually have some interesting story to tell.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
almost like I feel like maybe not the end destination, but like the stop on their travels, like
Hmm.
it's like the Wayfarers like outpost almost.
Oh, you feel like Lander is or Wyoming more generally?
I was thinking Lander specifically,
Okay.
but like it's a place where you can decide to stop, if that makes sense. Like you don't have to move on.
Right. Right.
But it's almost like when you come here, there's John Gasser actually mentioned this. He was like, there's something about Lander that puts people into a new set of drive.
Hmm.
At least he
Okay.
noticed that. He's like going back home to Virginia, he said people are pretty set in their ways. So he's like
Oh.
said like in Lander, it seems like people are trying to see who they can become.
Oh, okay. So it's sort of like a place where people actually will like explore their identity in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
Interesting. Yeah, you could go off into the desert, like John the Baptist almost. You go off into the
yeah.
desert and sort of explore who is it that I am.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course some people stay in the desert, but then some people might come back out
Yeah.
and enter. Yeah, I mean, who's running the Heritage Foundation now? Kevin Roberts, the second president of the school. Like you met him, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think know him better personally than I do. I've only met him once or twice, but I kind of wonder if he would relate to that idea of yeah, you go to little Wyoming. Not well, Wyoming's big spatially, but population wise, we're the smallest state in the union.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just wonder if there's a way that he would relate to that idea. Like you go someplace and your vision sort of becomes more clear to you. Oh, when was in college, I did a vision quest. Um, so I just went to this spot in the desert and just stayed there for 4 days and never left this one spot. It was this little cabin that my friend had outside Lander, probably about 5 miles.
Hmm.
So no food.
No
I
food.
did have water.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess so I'm under the impression, and I'd be happy to be corrected by someone who is an expert on the subject, but I believe when Native American tribes did it, you went no food and no water. I mean that wouldn't surprise me at all. However, I guess I did the soft version where I had water with me. But yeah, so no food for 4 days.
Wow.
Um, and yeah, you just sit in one spot and you just sort of let whatever your mind settles on just kind of washes over you. And it's funny how like each day has I remember each day having like kind of a different emotional theme,
Mm.
right? Day 3, I just felt great. I just felt so happy. I just was like, maybe I should just leave now. Like maybe this is the point of just like I just felt elated and like so energized for let's see, I would have been going into my senior year, so I was just so excited about life and everything. Then interestingly, day 4, so the day after, was it was like totally opposite. It was like an inverse experience mood wise.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking about like all these things that I was angry about or upset about, or, just like all these little things that might have been negative energies in my life. Right. And, it lasted all day. Right. And it wasn't until the morning of the 5th day when I left. Oh, crap. Uh, Got to keep an eye on that fire. The last podcast, it just burns down around us. Um, but yeah, but anyway, it wasn't until the 5th day when I woke up, had something to eat, got in the truck, came back into town, um, that I had this sense of sort of like, uh, life is life has its mixture of good and bad, right? And I think I was 21 at the time. So, I mean, like all good retreats, you don't just, the mood that you're in when you come out doesn't necessarily equal the value of it. You're unpacking it for perhaps the rest of your life, certainly the next couple of years.
Mm.
So, yeah. Hold on. Let me just,
That sounds
let
powerful.
me stir
Oh,
cold.
sure.
Actually, it was interesting because the first thing I had when I got out. It was a bag of pretzels and uh a couple swigs of whiskey.
That's a good way to come out.
It wasn't Johnny Walker. What's the one with the black label? Uh, is it called Jack? Like Jack number 7? I should remember this. Clearly, my mind was so fuzzy from the hunger.
Oh,
Oh, what is it? Oh, yeah.
remembering.
But anyway, so yeah. Well, when we remember, if that place wants to sponsor our podcast,
Yeah.
we'll accept them as well. Oh, it's like the most common whiskey ever. Like your most common American bourbon. It's got the black label.
Jack Daniels.
Jack Daniels. There you
Oh,
go.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
am I? Yeah. Yeah. It was like Jack Daniels, right? Where like I had like 2 shots of it on a completely empty stomach.
Oh, I bet that hit hard.
Oh, it was great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it was fantastic. Yeah. Best way to end a
That's right.
retreat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, come out swinging.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So,
That's
yeah.
interesting. I did a sophomore year. We had a Miles Christi silent retreat for 3 days. So,
Okay.
um, it was with prayer and like the Ignatius spiritual practices,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
meditation primarily. Like you have like these certain questions and you try to come up with answers.
Uh-huh.
That was powerful. I It's interesting how hard it is to be quiet for that long.
How
Like
long was it? There was 3 days.
3 days,
Okay.
and you're there with all your friends and you can't talk to them.
Right. Right.
So you're just sitting there, and yeah, that was powerful. I think there's something very valuable about just letting your thoughts go where they've been trying to go for a while
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
just seeing where they do go, like you were saying. Yeah.
What's the sorry, I should be closer to the mic.
Oh, you're good.
Do you have any more experience with the Ignatian spirituality beyond those retreats?
No, I need to do it more.
Okay.
I've heard very good things about it though.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're typically called the spiritual exercises of Saint Ignatius, right?
Yep.
And the full version is like 30 days.
Yeah.
Does that sound right? Yeah.
My mom did the 30 days.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if I could do 30 days of silence, but it'd be a good challenge.
You don't know if you could do 30 days of silence?
Mhm.
Really?
I don't know. It'd be interesting.
I don't, so like when we do events together, I don't feel like you're the guy who's like trying to like push, like always trying to push his way into the conversation, or like always like, oh man, like make way. Tom has something to say. You know what I mean? Like you seem very reflective naturally. So it's funny to hear you say, I don't know if I could be silent that long. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it's like, I think like it's touching back to reality
Uh-huh.
because when you're quiet for too long, I think you can let your mind go to places where it seems like it's in a good place, but it's actually not.
Right. Right.
Like you can come up with thoughts that seem correct, but then you ask someone about them and then they're check you. They're like, that doesn't really add up.
Sorry,
Um,
this is like the spiritual direction that you're getting when you're doing the
oh,
Ignatian exercises.
no, this was just like what happens to people if they're by themselves too long.
Oh, okay.
If they don't have a way to check their thoughts, they can go crazy.
Right.
I guess that was my fear. I was like, I hope I didn't go crazy in 30 days. It probably wouldn't, but
Yeah, I mean, I think you have interaction in the sense that you're hearing a lot of readings, you're hearing meditations, and if I understand correctly, a proper Ignatian retreat is guided,
it is.
right?
Mhm.
So I think there's quite a bit of push, right? So it's a lot different than guys up in Alaska who like they just live in their cabin all winter long, right? And they come out and like they they exhibit some of the signs of mental illness after being in the dark, so no vitamin D, no sunlight,
Mm.
and no one to talk to, no human interaction for 90 or 120 days, right? I had a friend who was up in Alaska, and he said, "Yeah, these guys come out in the springtime, and they're in the store for the first time, and he's like, they got this weird look. They got their eyes are a little crazy, and they're kind of just walking down the aisles, talking to themselves. You know, it's like,
Oh man.
yeah, it's not good for you. So, yeah,
Well, I heard that, it's like solitary confinement is considered the worst form of punishment.
yeah. I mean, I would think it would be. Oh, I mean,
Like it was I think like in war times too, like in World War II, it was like the worst
mm-hmm.
they could come up with. So it's
Yeah.
interesting how I think that reflects back on when Christ says that man it's not or God said that it's not good for man to be alone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, it's like I think we are made in the image and likeness of God, which is a family.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like that constant I don't know what it is exactly that draws us to other people.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean,
Maybe it's
it seems pretty clear that there's at least a biological foundation for it, right? I mean, um, you look at the health of people who have regular human contact, both physical and verbal, and it far outstrips populations of people who are generally super isolated. I mean, they're seeing this in nursing homes,
mm,
right? Where uh, residents who have contact from grandkids and family tend to do better than those who don't.
mm,
Um, to the point that actually in Japan, it's interesting. I read, no, I heard a podcast. Yeah, I heard another podcast where the guy was talking about how in certain parts of Japan they're experimenting with having kindergarteners and preschoolers spend part of their day with residents of elderly care homes, right?
oh
Yeah, Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a bit of, of course, with anything like this, there's going to be a little confirmation bias.
Mhm.
But certainly the caretakers were saying that the elderly seem to be doing better when they, after a few weeks or a few months of that regular contact with children and just other human beings. So, but I think it has a biological basis at least, and I mean, I think it has a spiritual side of it as well. That's what I find so interesting about John the Baptist is,
Mm.
yeah, going back to the hermit in the desert for a bit. I mean, he had a time of hermitage, uh, and it seems that he spent time away from the tribe, so to speak, that he went out into the desert and in both, I think, probably a physical and a spiritual way, really faced death, right?
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
the dangers of the desert, of course, starvation, dying of thirst, also wild animals, but also to be away from your support network, away from the people who help feed and take care of you, right? To go through that experience. A psychologist I was talking to suggested that that's what gave him his courage later in his ministry, right?
Oh.
That when his whole tribe, Herod, and the ruling class all turned against him, it doesn't really seem to shake John very much.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, right. He seems content to preach even when Herod like brings him up out of the dungeon. At least this is the way I imagine it. We read Herod like to listen to him talk, right? So you can sort of imagine like bring out John the Baptist, and I think he was someone who could just speak the truth even to very powerful people who held their life in his hand.
Mhm.
And I think some of that flowed from the experience of he had faced death before.
Mm.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, that's interesting.
yeah.
That's
Do you
very
know the
interesting.
Crosses out of Massachusetts? Pat Cross.
No,
Okay.
I don't.
Yeah. Peter Cross, Isaac Cross. Anyway, their dad's a psychologist.
Oh.
Really, yeah, super cool guy. Um, and yeah, we were just sitting around the breakfast table one day. We had just done an admissions event the night before. So, yeah, we were just talking about John the Baptist, and he sort of gave this theory about, from his knowledge and wisdom as a psychologist, how people without their tribe have to face death in a very real way. So,
Mm.
yeah,
That's very interesting.
yeah. Isn't that?
To think about that.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's always like that idea of you need to go into solitude to find God,
Mm-hmm.
and you do that silently. And
Yep.
it's interesting because God is also the one that gave us community and people
Right.
and all those other things. So
Yep.
it's like maybe it's maybe it's just the absence of those who see the value in them, maybe. And maybe that's part of it.
Yeah, I'm sure that's part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. When something is taken away from you is usually when we
Hmm.
understand its worth the most,
Yeah.
right? Both negative and positive, right? If some things get taken away from us and we realize we never really needed them that much,
Hmm.
and then some things get taken away from us and we're like, oh,
That was really
that
good.
was great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Cause yeah, it's like cause God doesn't always want us to stay alone.
Right. Right.
Cause like in the Inferno, Dante shows that being alone is the worst punishment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And like the greatest joy is to be with God.
Right.
So it's very interesting that a lot of like the saints were all hermits or like people that stay to themselves a lot.
Yep.
It's almost like when they do come back, then they see the value and then they really love what's good almost.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. I mean, we keep saying alone, but I mean, at least in the case of the saints, that time alone is really time of prayer, reflection, and communion with God, right? I mean, so
Mhm.
they're probably coming out of those experiences filled up in some way with their encounters with God. Although, I mean, almost every retreat experience or hermit experience, I mean, yeah, there's isolation and desolation even in those.
Yeah.
Maybe desolation would be the better word. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. I mean, if just to go out into the desert was to have this amazing experience of the divine, more people would do it, right? Like there has to
Yeah.
be there's the struggle aspect for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about this a little bit today, but there's I don't know if you've read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
No, I don't think I have.
So he wrote a book called Think and Grow Rich in the 30s,
Okay.
and he studied under Andrew Carnegie for quite
Oh,
some time.
okay. Okay. So the how to make friends and influence people.
Different guy.
Different guy.
Yeah, so that was Dale Carnegie.
That was Dale Carnegie. Okay.
He was kind of in another he was kind of looking at the psychological aspect, and Napoleon Hill was looking more at the business through
Oh,
the
so this
mind.
is Andrew Carnegie of like Carnegie
Yeah,
Hall.
of Carnegie
Right,
Hall.
right,
Yeah,
right. Yeah. Have you ever seen those t-shirts that say like ask me about my performance at Carnegie Hall?
I
Have
haven't
you ever
read.
seen those? You see them around sometimes. I just never know if they're like ironic or not, right?
Mm,
Like if you go to Carnegie Hall, do they give you a t-shirt?
I don't know.
Or is there just some punk on the internet being like, this will be funny. Let's make t-shirts that say that say this and people can wear it around. I don't know. But anyway.
Well, I know Marika went to Carnegie Hall,
Uh-huh.
so we should ask her.
Marika Carter.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
so we should ask her.
Yeah.
Huh.
All right. Yeah.
Put that on the list of things to do.
Right, right. Right.
But
This is the advantage of having Aiden, right? You can
yeah,
be like, Aiden, hey, pop an email to
yeah,
pop an email to Marika right now.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
But anyway, sorry. So this author.
Oh yeah. So he wrote this book called Think and Grow Rich. So it's essentially showing you what it means to make a fortune. So you have an idea, a desire for something, and you put a plan together, and then you do a few other things like teaching yourself how to do auto suggestion, like positive affirmations, things like that to bring
Mhm.
you closer. Because um, it's like Pascal said that the heart hath reasons that even reason doesn't understand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's essentially saying your mind is going to limit you based on what it knows,
Right.
but your heart will take you places where it knows it should be. So he essentially writes in this book, if this is what the riches that you want, whether that's greater love with God, a better family, um, material wealth, all these different things, he said you have to choose that, and then by choosing it, then you figure it out with your mind. So you don't limit yourself what you think you can do, but you choose what you think you should do.
Uh-huh.
So very interesting thought. It's very Christian almost
Uh-huh.
because
It's sort of you choose the good and then your intellect sort of brings up the rear in a certain sense.
exactly.
Right.
Like you tell it what you need, and then they'll
Uh-huh.
figure it out for you.
Right. Right.
Um, where's I going with this? But let's see, what was the thing we were talking about before that? We were talking about uh isolation, desolation. Oh, I remember. Okay, so in there he talks about you have to outlast temporary pain because what you
Mm.
want is on the other side of that.
Right. Right.
And it's interesting because I don't know. I think it's part of what happens with free will. If you have free will, there's always a chance of destruction,
Mm-hmm.
creation.
Yep.
And because we're in a place where there's lots of destruction, we have to go through that destruction to find what's good. So it's like the Israelites crossing the desert, they had to go through that time of desolation and destruction for
Yeah.
the promised land.
Right.
And so there's like these desert points in life where we feel like we're not making any progress or doing anything we want to do.
Yeah.
We're just like, what's going on?
Flailing. Yeah.
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 But it's really the people who make it are the ones who can withstand pain.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Mm-hmm.
all temporary. It's just in our minds, it's like, how much temporary pain can we handle? Can
Right.
we handle an hour, days, years, or longer?
Yeah.
And generally, the longer we can withstand, the greater the outcome at the end.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
essentially what the salvation history is about. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
can you withstand all the world will throw at you until you die?
Right. Can you run the good race?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Hold on. I was gonna
Oh, you're good.
toss a little. For now. Yeah, yeah, it's interesting how, I mean, just in field after field after field, parenting, teaching, horseback riding, acting, um, it's it seems, I don't think it's quite this way, but if you listen to the people who do it really well and are veterans of it, the way they talk almost sounds as if it's a matter of not talent, but just the ability to be bad at it and not really mind being bad at it and
Mhm.
being able to. I remember when I was a teacher, first year teaching, everything goes wrong, right?
Mhm.
The students are testing you all the time. You don't really know your style. You haven't found the things that work, right? So you try being really hard, and that your class falls apart. And then you try being really friendly and accessible, and then that falls apart as well, right? And it's like you haven't figured out how to do it in any real way. Um, and so you have to be willing to be totally confounded as well. I have no idea. I'm not doing well. I can tell that I'm not doing well, but I don't even really know why I'm not doing well.
Mm.
Right? Again, like, hey, I tried being really hard and strict with the students, and that was a disaster. And then I tried being really friendly and accessible, and that was a disaster. Why are what am I doing wrong here? Right? And the answer is, for a while, everything. You're doing everything wrong,
Mm.
right? And then step by painful step, you figure out what works. Um, Harrison Ford had a quote about acting, and it was along the same lines. He said, when it comes to who makes it in Hollywood, it's often not who's good. It's often about who's left. And he
Oh.
said, yeah, he moved to Hollywood with many peers, right? Many people about the same age, same interest in acting. And one by one, they dropped out. And so by the time he was in his mid 30s or early 30s, I think is when he started getting good roles.
Hmm.
Um, so that, I don't know the exact number of years, but it was something, I think it was something like 8 years that he was just flailing in Hollywood, right?
Wow.
Making money as a carpenter.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Um, and then, yeah, just eventually you needed someone who could act decently well and was in his early 30s. Harrison Ford was like the only guy left, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and it just seems to show up in industry after industry.
Mhm.
I think the exception seems to be sports to some degree because kids get introduced to sports very early on in life,
Mhm.
and then of course just the athleticism peaks usually between 20 and 40. So you know yes, those kids have put in the time, but they've been playing a sport. It might be a little different than other pursuits like acting or like teaching or um, things of that nature. I'd love to have a professional athlete on here to.
Yeah.
I'm sure they've endured pain as well.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, it's a lot of Tony Robbins talks about this. He said, what you do in private, you'll be rewarded for in public.
Uh-huh.
So it's a lot of that like invisible suffering that no one sees
Yep.
and only you know.
Right.
And you're just hoping that you can get there. But you're not sure if you will. And that's the hardest part really. It's like, um, do you know Alex Harmozy?
I don't.
Okay. He is a pretty big name in the entrepreneur world.
Okay.
Young guy, he's mid-30s now.
Mid-30s. I'm
But
behind, Tom. I'm
well,
behind.
we'll get you there. I mean, I think like, he's one of those guys that decided that he was gonna be invisible for years.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Like he hardly did anything but work for years.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said it was very painful because he said like you feel like you have all your friends going to big jobs or making it, they're getting six-figure incomes, all these things right out of school. And he started in gyms. He's like, and I'm living in my friend's apartment building and I'm trying to run a gym. He's like, there's like literally like no status, no nothing, and he's like,
Right. You meet people at a bar. Hey, what do you do? I run a gym. Great.
yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Right.
And he's like,
Where do you live? Uh in the city.
yeah. Won't go into specifics.
Right. Right. What do you drive? Any car my friends will let me borrow.
Yeah.
Jeez, what's his name again?
Alex Harmozy.
Harmozy.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll have to share some.
Is he is he kind of like reddish brown hair?
He's very dark black,
Oh,
very big
okay.
beard,
Oh,
long
okay.
hair.
Different
Usually he has
guy.
a band-aid on his nose.
Oh,
He has a very bad nose, so he has to get a lot of surgery for it.
oh, okay.
But
Interesting.
very jacked.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Big dude.
Yeah.
And yeah, he talks about that the hardest part with entrepreneurship is like you don't know if it's gonna work. You're
Mm,
working on this project for a long time. You think it's worth it. You don't know if it is. So he said it's probably is if you question if it's worth it.
mm.
And he says everyone is making fun of you. No one's rooting for you. So if anything, they're saying you're kind of stupid for doing this.
Oh, yeah.
And then once you get there, then they'll be like, "Oh, I was with you the whole time,"
Oh, really?
because they don't want to be your enemy after you win.
Right. Of course. Of course. Yeah.
So, but it's
Oh,
interesting.
that sucks.
Yeah, it's like that invisible pain that you can't really tell anyone about because no one else is experiencing it.
Yeah. It kind of makes me wonder if, man, I wonder if for some people it's once they become winners, is it almost worse? Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because all of a sudden everyone's on your side
Mhm.
and you're like, ah,
Who's real?
who are my real allies? Right.
Yeah.
I wonder, I'd be curious if people who become very successful, if some of them just like sell it all off and try starting from scratch again, just to get back to that
Mm,
feeling of the hustle.
yeah.
Right. I mean, like, yeah, you actually have to like me. If you're around me, it's because you like me. Because
Right.
I can provide you no other benefit except my company.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, let me ask you this. I mean, there's so many jobs where like you can look up on the internet, hey, I'm thinking about becoming an actuary. I'm thinking about becoming a nurse. I'm thinking about becoming a physical therapist, whatever. And you can pretty much see what those people make in every state, right? I mean, is it, and for some people that's very comforting, right? They just want that steady life, right? Hey, if I do this, then I will basically get this, and then over time I will accrue, I will grow in my career. And this is like a very expected career path. Don't you think? I just don't. I just don't want to write those people off as if they're doing something wrong in some way. I think for a lot of people, that's what works.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if everyone had to be an entrepreneur, I think that would be sort of suffocating in some way. But certainly, yeah, yeah, that's probably the biggest challenge of entrepreneurship is you abandon that narrative,
Yeah.
right? Right. You abandon that narrative of like, oh, hey, like I can work for this many years as an apprentice plumber, and then I can start my own plumbing company or just work as a master plumber. And this is basically how much I'll make. And it's pretty, barring something wildly unforeseen, it's very predictable.
Yes. Yeah.
But like, think about the guys starting. I was just reading about Elon Musk this morning. Um, him and what was it, five other guys starting PayPal. Like, there's no guarantee that PayPal was going to work,
Mm-hmm.
right? It did, but it could have. It could have not.
Yeah.
And then, right, man, all this time, all that time, those years of sleepless nights. And what's it for?
Right.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough to say. Like, well, I learned valuable lessons. No one wants to hear that.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's the hardest part is like it's uncertain. It's like, is it gonna happen or not? And
Right.
it's a lot of times it's your decision if it will work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you say this is gonna work, then you'll
Mm.
find a way to make it work.
Hold on.
With most
Let me
patience.
challenge that a little bit. A
Sure.
little bit. I do agree that at a certain point you need to make a decision. Like I'm doing this, but don't you think that some entrepreneurs probably try five or six ideas, and at some point they realize either I don't have the resources or the market's not ready for my idea. I
Mm,
need to move on to another idea.
right.
Right? It's not that they didn't believe in it or anything,
Mhm.
but then they move on. I mean, isn't that the narrative with some successful entrepreneurs? Is it's idea five or six that or business five or six that finally actually takes off. Is that true, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I've done that.
Okay.
So I did Amazon FBA in school,
Uh-huh.
and then I got out of it after graduation.
Yeah.
I was actually starting to make money in it.
Sorry, what, Amazon?
FBA, so you essentially just sell products on Amazon.
Do you want some of this Noble Oak?
I think I'll have a little bit.
A little bit? Okay, I can give you a light pour.
So like, um, um, so, uh,
Cheers.
go.
Yeah. It's got a good nose. Noble Oak for anyone who's listening. And if Noble Oak is listening,
Yeah. We wouldn't mind.
Yeah, right.
To reach out.
Yeah. Okay, so you said Amazon.
FBA, which stands for
FBA.
Fulfilled by Amazon.
Okay.
So you essentially just send products to the warehouse, make a listing on their website, and see if you sell it. So I sold different things. I sold like recipe boxes. I sold like these little baskets that you proof bread in. You know those little baskets you see
Yeah.
in the
Yeah, my
street?
sister has one of those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I sold those. And then the last thing that actually was my best seller was microfiber cloths for cleaning glassware.
Oh.
Yeah, pretty niche.
Uh-huh. Microfiber cloths.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So for like bars and restaurants and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That actually sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, I have some
Yeah.
actually still.
You do? Yeah.
I need to bring them to like dinner crew or something.
Yeah, that'd be great for dinner crew.
So, but yeah, so I was actually starting to make a profit. But then I decided to exit because I didn't think I wanted to support what Amazon was doing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to make sure my energy was going towards something what I thought was probably the best practice for business.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think you're right. I was maybe spoke hastily. I think it's like you know it's something that's good and it needs to be around,
Mm-hmm.
then you can figure it out. I think if like what you're saying is very valid, if it's not like good in the market, people don't really need this thing yet.
Mm-hmm.
Or sometimes they think they don't need it and they actually do. And then it's kind of like very hard.
And what every insurance salesman has said at
Yeah,
one time or another.
exactly,
Right.
yeah.
God damn it. They don't think they need this.
Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah. I think that is actually part of wisdom to know when to exit. I think it's a lot of times it happens right before they get to the destination. Like
Mm-hmm.
in that Think and Grow Rich book, there's a story about a guy who bought gold mining equipment and was mining for gold,
Yep.
and he wasn't getting any. He wasn't getting anything.
Yeah.
Sold all the equipment. The next guy picks it up, digs in the same hole, finds gold 3 feet away from where he stopped. And the guy said he never ever stopped his pursuit after that. He was like, I was 3 feet away from gold.
Oh, the guy who has sold it all off.
Uh-huh.
He found out
That he was 3 feet away.
3 feet away.
Yeah.
And after that, he's like, I'm never quitting anything again.
Yeah. Like literally, it's just like the size of this table. He was that close to
Mhm.
gold. So, but that was the story of like if you, it's probably going to be after a long effort, like Sylvester Stallone, like he had
Yeah.
to sell his dog
Right.
to get enough money to get something for Rocky.
Right. And there's
And yeah,
do you know if it's true that they offered him like $25,000 for the script and he said, no, I want to be in it. Do you know if it's true that then the studio came back and said, we will give you $135,000 for the script? Have you heard that? Do you know if it's true?
I've heard of that. I'm
Okay.
not sure of the validity, but I think it's true.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and that's not 135K today. I mean, Rocky came out is it 84?
That sounds right. Yeah,
Was that all the Rocky movies?
I believe so.
The first one wasn't in the 70s, I don't think. I should know this stuff. This is basic American, the basic knowledge for American cinephiles. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, can you imagine like they come back, they offer you over 100 grand more. I mean, in the 80s, that would have been a comfortable salary for probably, I think 3 years at least. It would have been a very comfortable salary.
Yeah.
So yeah, we should probably call my dad and be like, hey, Dad,
Yeah.
go back. Yeah. What would you have been overjoyed to make back in the 80s?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think it's, well, I have to recall, but I think it was like $1 then is worth $5 or $7 now.
Hmm. Okay.
But yeah, that was quite a bit of money back then.
Right.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. It's
$5. Yeah. So, okay. So 1983 and 84. Yeah. A dollar then was like five now. Yeah. Yeah. So to get offered $500,000 plus for your script.
or script alone too.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Right. It's already done. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then to just have yeah, the Sylvester Stallone cojones to be like,
Yeah.
no, put me in it, you know?
Yeah. You won't regret it.
Right. Right.
No, I mean, powerful movie.
Hmm.
I think like because it even exemplified his stalwart nature in the movie when in the end when he gets the fight, he's like I can lose the fight, but I'm never gonna just stop. I'm
Hmm.
gonna keep fighting even if I can't win.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And like that's a powerful thing to say. Like even
Mm-hmm.
if you can't win, you're not gonna stop.
Yep. Yep.
Because usually that's why you do something is because you
Because you can win.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, I look at I mean, I think, I'm a big fan. I can't claim any real expertise in it, but I'm certainly love impressionist art, right? And
Mm,
you read about some of the impressionists who just struggled for the entirety of their career. I mean, they never made it big. Many of them. I mean, Van Gogh, Monet, Monet experienced more success, but yeah, I mean, many of these artists didn't never made a name for themselves in their lifetime,
mm,
right? But for me, I think painting is kind of easy because you can see how that artistic vision, it's just something in your soul. Like it's easy to understand. Yeah, I have to paint. If I don't paint, I'll go crazy. Right. So
mhm,
even if I don't make money at it, oh well.
mhm. Yeah.
I'll go crazy if I don't, so I'd better. Right. It must be a little different, would you say, with entrepreneurial
Mm,
undertakings, right? Where it's like, I don't know if this idea is going to work. I don't know if people are going to buy my idea. Maybe I should do something else. Like maybe I should try a different idea. Maybe that'll make money, right?
yeah.
Uh, I don't know. What's been your experience?
I think it's your conviction on the good you think will come from your product or service.
Okay.
I think if you know what it can do for somebody, your vision,
Yep.
I think that's is what will keep you going.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like it's interesting, but people aren't motivated really by money,
Uh-huh.
even though that seems strange.
Yep.
They're usually motivated by other things that involve money.
Yep.
But if people were actually motivated by money per se, you probably see a lot more people staying in the game for money a lot longer. But like if you
Oh,
there's
interesting. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So say more. Say more. Right.
So I've heard like different things that like some people would rather have promotions at work
Uh-huh.
being status rather than actually a raise in wages. Or like um in other circumstances it's like when you ask people like why did they start a business?
Mm-hmm.
It's usually not because they wanted money. It was more like they wanted to do something good
Mm-hmm.
and they're hoping that they could make a fortune by that, but it was more like I want to do something good and then fortune will follow.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So that was just, and I also heard that from other people that money isn't a motivation. So I don't know if
Mm.
that's 100% true, but just from my experience, I've noticed that people that stay in the game longer, they have a lot bigger reason than money.
Okay. You have to have a bigger reason than money to stay in a painful project.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you could
Right.
get by with not that much money.
Mm. Or, I mean, there are probably fields that are almost always lucrative, right? I mean, if you
Mhm.
want to go to I mean, Wall Street's the easy example, but I mean, there are stock exchanges in every major city, right? Like you could go to Singapore and work on a stock exchange or sell bonds and make very good money
Mhm.
in Singapore or Dallas or Chicago, right? So again, Wall Street's the easy example to bring to mind, but yeah, if you're just interested in cash, there are probably some fairly predictable ways to get into that world, right, of just getting into the money business.
Mhm.
Um, I'm sure that those guys might struggle too for a while, and they have to get their break. Um, but yeah, yeah. I mean, if you a true entrepreneur, right, has to sort of love what it is they're bringing to to the world. Even
Mhm.
they're bringing it through the market, right? Because they are selling something, but they are trying to bring something good to the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah.
Hopefully an
Some people
entrepreneur.
don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully an entrepreneur is trying to do that. Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe maybe the guy who like invented do you remember Digipets? Gigapets. Oh dude, there were these like like an AirPods case,
Uh-huh.
right? Imagine that size and shape with a little dot matrix screen, like a dot matrix screen is like what you have on the Nintendo Game Boy,
Oh.
right? Yeah, it was a gigapet, and like it had these little buttons, and like throughout the day you would have to like feed it. You know, you'd like tap the little button to give it food, and you would tap another little button to clean it, and then like another combination of buttons like would put it down for a nap, right? Yeah, and
Oh.
it was this huge fad, back in like I'm gonna say 95 or 96. Man, this is
That
why
was before my day.
we need a fact checker.
Yeah. We need Jamie.
Was it 95, 96? Was that it? Um, and yeah, I mean, every it seemed every middle schooler in America had one or two or three or four of these gigapets, right? But I mean, they would die on you, right? Like if you didn't, yeah, like if you missed feeding it for a day or two, or you didn't put it down for its nap or what have you, yeah, they would die.
Whoa.
Yeah, you would have a dead gigapet, and I mean, they were like they were only yay big. I mean, they were the size of a keychain, right? So people would just have them on their backpack, and like between classes, they'd be like, "Oh, I gotta feed my I gotta feed my little cat, right, or my little dragon." Yeah, they were this huge fad,
Whoa.
totally useless. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
an utter waste of time. Maybe that guy was really cynical and being like, "Ah, people will buy this," you know.
Yeah.
He wasn't trying to do good in the world.
Yeah.
He was just like, this'll get him.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's funny. I never heard about that.
Oh yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, the 90s had some really interesting fads. Um, because the market, so the 90s, I mean, the economy was roaring. I mean, it was just doing great. We had come out of the Cold War. America was on top of the world. It had access to manufacturing from really cheap Asian manufacturing. So, um, yeah, I mean, I'm going to say anything could take off. Not everything, of course,
Mhm.
took off, but yeah, the 90s, yeah, there were some material fads that exploded.
Mm.
Pokemon cards,
Oh yeah.
Gigapets, Pogs. Yeah, Pogs.
I don't think I know those either.
Oh, dude, we gotta show you some Pogs. Yeah, yeah, they were these little round cardboard discs, and they had like little designs on them, like cartoon characters or weird designs, and yeah, there was this game you could play, where you would like, it was called a slammer. It was this like little disc of heavy rubber, and you would stack up your pogs, and you would throw the slammer, and you try to get the pogs to flip. And like if you flipped your friend's pogs the correct way, you got his pogs, and if he flipped yours, you could lose your pogs. And it was, yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah,
man.
yeah. The 90s fads. Yeah. Yeah, you had to have your pogs, and then like you had your pog tubes.
Fog too.
Yeah, yeah, they were imagine like a very thin, very long Pringles case. You know what I mean? So it was this cylindrical
Oh.
tube, and you could get them this long, right? And you just fill them with these little cardboard discs, this thick, you just have hundreds of pogs, and just you throw them in your backpack and you were ready. You have your little slammer on top. Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, you were ready to throw down with the pogs. Yeah.
The things people do.
Yeah, they were this was pre-internet. This is how we entertained ourselves. Yeah.
It sounds like a lot of fun.
Except when you lose your prized,
yeah.
yeah, your prized 1 in 1,000, silver, uh, Arnold. You remember like Hey Arnold, this TV show? Okay, anyway, it was
man,
this cartoon. It was this cartoon back in the day. I'm just no, all I'm doing is just revealing how old I am. Yeah, anyway, so yeah, you lose your 1 in 1,000 silver Hey Arnold pog, and your day's ruined. Yeah.
Oh man. Oh,
Beanie Babies. Beanie Babies were
Oh,
big. Yeah, you know about
yeah.
Beanie Babies.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about that at Dinner Crew, weren't we? When we were talking about that divorcing couple, that in front of a judge, they brought in their entire Beanie Baby collection.
Oh yeah.
And the judge was like, okay, miss, you go. Okay, sir, you go. And just back and forth, that's how they split up the Beanie Baby collection. Yeah.
Wow.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and it was like this mountain of Beanie Babies right there in the courtroom.
Hilarious.
Huh?
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard Beanie Babies are very lucrative now. That's what I've heard, especially stuffed animals.
Yeah, yeah. They were big. I think it was like right around 99, 2000.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like when eBay started, so like when
Mm.
eBay first became big on the internet,
Mm-hmm.
one of the prominent, like you'd get the eBay magazine, right?
Oh.
These early internet businesses that still sent out magazines, right? You get the eBay magazine and it would have Beanie Babies on the front, like, hey, look what's up for auction. The
Oh.
Beanie Baby collection of Joey Alvarez down in Texas selling off his Beanie Babies. They'd list them all out.
That's funny.
Yeah, it was fun.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go back and look at all these 90s fads. That was 98 when I came with the
You were born 98. Okay. All right. So you missed Pokemon, you missed Gigapets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, you missed you missed throwing a lot of money down the drain, that's for sure. What do you think of these new digital commodities like digital real estate? Like I just saw this ad for Grand Theft Auto. There's these Grand Theft Auto Online. They're advertising how you can buy space in these in-game parking garages, and you buy space. So I mean, it's like real estate. Like you are renting space so that you can park your GTA cars in this. I'm gonna call it digital real estate again.
Yeah.
What do you think of this monetization of the gaming world?
It's very interesting.
Uh-huh.
Michael Saylor's talked about it a bit.
Mhm.
I think I've shared some things with you from him.
From
Michael Saylor.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
He's the conservative billionaire, big spokesman for Bitcoin, probably the biggest.
Okay.
And he was talking about that the reason he thinks that gaming currencies will never become big is because they're not tied to the real world yet.
Okay.
He says if there's a way to tie them into some real aspect of the world,
Uh-huh.
he said he think they'll gain value.
Okay.
So he says because essentially if you're just in a game,
Mm-hmm.
then it's only valuable inside the game.
Okay.
So you're only in that paradigm or parameter of action that it's valuable as something.
Uh-huh.
Granted, people will put money from the outside world into their game.
Okay. Sure.
But
Okay. So it's money goes in all the time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but not much money comes out.
Interesting.
Like the only
Except for the people who own the game.
Yeah, exactly. The people own the game, and then people who take videos of them playing the game.
Mhm.
Usually the ones who make money.
Mhm.
But there's no like in and out transaction of the game. So I think he was saying that he thinks if that happens, he thinks that games will become much more valuable, and like there will be like those hidden gems inside games that actually have some real worth. But he says how you do that is an interesting question. You think?
Wait, he's saying you have to have something that's accessible through the game, but actually represents some sort of real physical object?
Yeah, something that you would use in the real world.
Okay.
So he said that's kind of like why Bitcoin is valuable because it's an internet information system
Okay.
that's tied to real world energy. So people are using actual energy and machines and all that stuff to make this information holder. And so you're putting in something that can then be used inside the real world. Like it's an information holder that you send people Bitcoin. It's essentially saying you have this type of property in this network frame.
All right. We're gonna get into
If you want
we're
to
gonna
go
get
down that
into
road.
yeah, no, we got to go down that
Okay.
road. I mean, that's half the reason we're doing this conversation today.
Mhm.
So I got to understand this stuff. Um, so okay, so let's leave video games aside for a minute.
Mhm.
Let's talk about Bitcoin.
Okay.
What when you say it is a physical thing, right? Certainly I can understand um a server or a computer needs energy to run, right? So I can certainly understand it taking some unit of energy
Mhm.
to make these machines work, right?
Mhm.
But then but then okay, but go on from there. So what is the next part of the equation? What is that machine doing when it holds a Bitcoin, I guess I'll say.
Yeah. So the way the network works is it's a conglomeration of many systems that are computers or ASICs, which essentially keep track of all the Bitcoin in that system.
Okay.
And every time they get the correct ledger, the first one that does that in
Mm-hmm.
each block, which is a 10-minute segment of recording transactions, the first one that gets the right order and everything else encrypts it, and then it can't be modified. And then it will receive the commissions for at least part of the commissions for that, if not all of them, for that time frame. And then until Bitcoin is all mined, they get a portion of new Bitcoin that they can then put into the system and someone can buy or they can hold on to whatever.
Okay.
So that's the network.
So
And
the network is, I mean, there are, I'm going to use the word packets of data
yep.
or phrase packets. So there are packets of data being exchanged over the internet,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
And when you say transactions, are you talking monetary transactions or just transactions of some type of some information from one server to another?
It's transactions of Bitcoin moving to a new place.
Okay.
So that's all it's really doing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just essentially a very huge ledger.
Okay.
So it's just,
So by analogy, by layman's analogy, we
yeah.
can think of it as just, I mean, just something like this,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Where it's just, yep, I am recording transactions between people.
Hmm.
Something is exchanged for, in this case, Bitcoin.
Yep.
Okay.
It's essentially like double accounting bookkeeping.
Okay.
So an old technology just magnified and in electronic space.
Okay. So we can think of Bitcoin as a ledger of transactions.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a public ledger that anyone can plug into
Mm-hmm.
and use
Mm-hmm.
as long as they follow the protocol.
Okay. So then when people say I have a Bitcoin or I'm invested in Bitcoin, Goldman Sachs has a ledger of its, stock exchanges, right?
Hmm.
But just because I can see purchases and sales doesn't mean I have, just because I could see that
Hmm.
doesn't give me value particularly. So when people say I have a Bitcoin, can you explain a little bit more what they have?
So they have a placement on the directory for what Bitcoin they have. So like it'll say this amount of Bitcoin
Uh-huh.
belongs to this address.
Okay.
And if you have that address, you have Bitcoin.
Okay. That's why guys are digging through dumps looking
Yep.
for old hard drives, right? Because that hard drive has its own address.
Yep.
And so that address, so there has been Bitcoin assigned to that address. And once it's assigned to that address, it can't be reassigned. Is that true?
Yeah, so the address holder would have to be the one in charge of where that next transaction goes.
Okay.
So if they
Gotcha.
lose it, it's gone forever.
Okay. So when someone says, "Oh, I have a Bitcoin,"
Mhm.
does that means they have the autonomy to authorize transactions between people?
No, so that would be a miner's job.
Okay.
So the miner's job is the one that verifies that transactions took place on the Bitcoin network in the correct manner.
Okay. Yep.
So if you say you just have a Bitcoin, you're essentially just saying that one of 21 million Bitcoin is assigned to this address that you are owner of.
Okay.
But how you hold on to that address can be your choice. Like you can write it down on a piece of paper, you can hold on a hard drive, you can memorize it, all the above. So essentially, that address is just an information code that can be stored in any way. And then you can choose how to use it. You can hold on to it forever, you can move it, you can sell it. It's your choice.
Okay. All right. So we use the analogy of we can use the analogy of a ledger, but now when you talk about addresses, I mean, can we think of it as again by analogy, can we think of it as like a subdivision with
Mhm.
different lots,
Yep.
right? And like, hey, this is 001 Renegade Street, 002 Renegade Street, all the this is 1021 Renegade Street, up and down the line, right?
Yep.
And so you can think of Bitcoin as um, certain addresses on that block. Um, yeah, so I'm thinking of Bitcoin as sort of like a city subdivision, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all right, so each is it true to say that Bitcoin is then assigned to a specific address? Like, hey, these 3 Bitcoin are sort of tagged to 123 Mayflower Street. Is that true to say?
Yes.
And there's a finite number of Bitcoin, but theoretically, a single person owns 123 Mayflower Street, right? A specific IP address,
Mm-hmm.
but they could have any number of Bitcoin assigned to their personal address. Is that true to say?
Yeah, yeah, they could either acquire it by purchasing it from someone else or
Mhm.
mining that Bitcoin. Yeah.
Okay, by mining that Bitcoin. Okay, so
Mhm.
then can you explain what mining a Bitcoin is? More technically, but sort of for the layman as much as
Mhm.
possible.
So my understanding of it is essentially the person, so there's maybe this is a good way to look at it.
Hmm.
So let's say let's just do like 100 Bitcoin and 100 houses,
Sure.
and each house has a public ledger
Hmm.
that's the same that everyone else's has.
Okay, so like a big billboard out on the front of their street that
Uh-huh.
matches everybody else's ledger.
Right.
Okay.
And so they keep track of where all the Bitcoin is the first time,
Hmm.
and then a little bit of like 1 or 2 Bitcoin is released. And whoever was the first person to make the correct record of everyone gets
Hmm.
the Bitcoin.
Whoever is the first person to record on their ledger out on their street,
Mm-hmm.
hey, so and so bought pizza from so and so,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whoever is the first to record that transaction
Mm-hmm.
between two other parties
Yes.
using a currency that could be euros, dollars, or anything,
Yeah.
right? They record that transaction. They're awarded a Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Okay.
Yeah. So maybe it's even a better way to look at it is like there is no subdivision yet, and there's going to be 100 houses, and each house is a Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
So you have, let's say, 100 people,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all trying to keep record of these what's people are buying, but no one owns a home yet.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever does the first job to correctly record who is buying what in
Mm-hmm.
this amount of time is awarded a house.
Okay.
So
Or
then,
could we say like awarded a lot? Like,
yeah, or like,
here's
yeah,
now this little square is yours.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So then all the other people, will verify the transaction as well to make sure that what they recorded was correct.
Okay. Yep.
Once everyone comes to consensus,
Yep.
then they start over again. So there's a new time block.
Okay. What that all right, that actually that makes a certain amount of sense. What is the raw material for, are we talking transactions of um like credit card transactions? Are we talking about international uh like monetary exchanges? Like what is, you talk about this ledger and whoever records the ledger first kind of gets the prize. But what is it that everyone's trying to record in this ledger?
In this letter. So
Yeah.
in the Bitcoin network, they're just trying to make sure all the Bitcoin moving to other new addresses is going to the right address at the right time,
Okay.
and there's no fraud or anything happening.
Okay. So just help me out here because this sounds a little self-referential.
Yeah.
So you're trying to record where Bitcoin is going, but also you're trying to be the first to record. You're simultaneously trying to record where Bitcoin is going, but then also you get Bitcoin by recording where other Bitcoin is going.
Yeah. And it may not have to go anywhere. So
Uh-huh.
let's say in 10 minutes is essentially saying what happened on the Bitcoin network.
Uh-huh.
And the
Okay.
first person that gets it correct, all the things that happen in those 10 minutes, then is rewarded Bitcoin. So for like when Satoshi was first mining Bitcoin, he mined the first million Bitcoin on his computer.
Okay.
He wasn't sending the Bitcoin anywhere or doing anything. He was essentially every 10 minutes was saying, this Bitcoin stayed here. And then the new Bitcoin that was allowed to went to this address and stayed there. And same thing. So he's essentially just recording what happens in those 10 minutes.
Okay.
So as more people join the network and they start transferring Bitcoin to new addresses, all the machines that are now on the network are just making sure all those transactions are going accordingly.
Okay. So when people say, oh, back in the, oh, I was mining for Bitcoin, it means I was running software that tracked the exchange of Bitcoin. Again, like they're tracking the exchange of Bitcoin that was created earlier, right? Okay. And inside a certain time window, and apparently 10 minutes, inside a certain time window, if I'm the first person to record the exchanges correctly, I can get a Bitcoin. So is that why people say, oh, it's harder and harder to mine Bitcoin because there's so much competition?
Yep.
Right. Like, so theoretically, someone back in 1980 could have mined Bitcoin. It would have taken them a lot longer, but there would have been no competition for it. Right. You would have been on a big mainframe computer.
Yeah. Well, it wouldn't, they couldn't have done it until Satoshi made his software for it.
Okay.
So he essentially built a software that was the Bitcoin software
Okay.
that then you run these computers with.
Okay.
So
Okay.
like you could download the protocol on my computer.
Okay.
I could start mining now.
Right.
But the chances of me getting anything from my mining is so low, it's
Oh,
not really worth it for me.
okay.
So I run
So
out of the computing
it
power.
would take an incredible amount of luck
Yeah.
for your computer, as small and as slow as it is, right?
Yeah.
Relatively speaking, right? That, yeah, you could run the software, but you could run it for the next 5 years and nothing,
Yeah.
right? There are people with furious amounts of computing power trying to do this.
Yeah.
Right. But it also explains why, like, gosh, this was probably maybe 8 years ago. A buddy of mine, he's like, yeah, maybe I should be mining. But 7, 8 years ago,
Much easier.
you could probably get something.
Yeah.
Right.
I know.
I could have done this 7 or 8 years
I
ago.
know. Everyone is like,
I know. Everyone's saying that. Everyone has a story about the fortune that slipped through their fingers, right?
But the interesting thing is like you can, if you get like a mining rig,
Uh-huh.
so they're like little shoebox size computers,
Uh-huh.
and then you can plug them into a pool network so
Uh-huh.
that you're helping that general network that's mining for Bitcoin. And if they get some,
Okay.
because they'll amount how much computing power you gave to them, and then they'll
Yep.
give you a little payback for it.
Okay.
So you can still mine for Bitcoin.
Okay.
It's pretty cool.
Okay. But you're just getting fractional shares of a coin.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. So then, all right. So yeah. So I said, okay, it seems a little self-referential. I think I'm
Right.
satisfied on that score. Now, how do you tie Bitcoin to value in the real world? Like people say, oh, a Bitcoin is worth 60K, 40K, 49.5K. You know, oh, I bought my dinner with a fraction of a Bitcoin,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So what is so you've got the software,
Mhm.
and then there's previous Bitcoin, and you're tracking where that goes. And now you've got people tracking that and trying to post the ledger, right? And if they do so successfully, they're awarded a new chain of code that is then their Bitcoin. Okay,
Mhm.
great.
Mhm.
How do you tie that to value in the real world? How do I buy a car with Bitcoin? Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So where does Bitcoin get its value essentially?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there's this is from Robert Breedlove. He was kind of explaining this the best I've heard it. There's 5 properties to money: portability, recognizability, durability, um, divisibility, and oh, there's a 5th one. But so let's say you start with durability. You want something that lasts a long time
Okay.
to put your value into. So, like gold has historically been it because gold doesn't deteriorate. It's a pure metal, so it
Right.
just stays.
Uh-huh.
Um, Portability, can you move it easily? Can it be moved across space and time effectively?
Mm-hmm.
That was probably gold's hardest thing. It couldn't get moved physically easily.
Somebody has to pick it up and carry it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's so valuable,
Mm-hmm.
there's so little of it. Oh, scarcity. That's the 5th
Scarcity.
one.
I was about to say, I'm like, I think he wants to say rarity.
Yeah. So that's you want your assets held in scarce things because you can't duplicate them. Because a duplicatable asset is a commodity. So the more things
Okay.
you can create in a marketplace, the less expensive it'll be because the more abundance it is.
All right. So I have one shirt. If
Yeah.
I had the only shirt in the world, everyone wants a shirt.
Yeah,
So everyone might be coming after me trying to get my shirt.
exactly.
But the first person who says, I bet I can make a shirt,
Yeah.
all of a sudden,
Drops your value of your shirt.
they make right. They make their own shirt.
Mhm.
Now half the people are going to him.
Yeah.
And so on down the chain.
Mhm.
Okay. So that's a commodity. A commodity is it's reproducible.
Mhm.
Right. I can grow more oranges. I can build
Mhm.
more cars.
Mhm.
Right. I can manufacture more whatevers.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what made gold valuable. And then recognizability, is it genuine?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we get the term sound money from because they would drop gold and see
Yep.
if it made a certain sound.
Yep. Right.
So
So it's very distinct, right?
very distinct.
Yeah.
And then so durability, recognizability, scarcity, portability we touched on,
Mm-hmm.
and then 5th one was, oh man. Ah, portability,
Sorry, I said durability,
durability,
portability,
portability,
rarity or scarcity.
rarity,
Okay.
recognizability.
Recognizability
Oh, divisibility.
and divisibility.
Okay.
Okay.
So divisibility is, can you divide your scarce asset up into smaller pieces so that as the value of it goes up, you can use less of it to do the same thing.
Okay.
So gold, we came up with the idea of dollar bills.
Mm-hmm.
So because it wasn't portable,
Mm-hmm.
they put into banks, which used to be called money warehouses.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, we're going to hold on to it for you. We're going to have a security guard. We're going to make sure no one takes it. Because it's so hard to move and it's so hard to split up gold, what we'll do is we'll just issue a little bill that
Mm-hmm.
you can then redeem for gold. Anyone can redeem it for this gold in this warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the money system for a long time. and then it broke when we went away from the gold standard. And
Yeah.
money bills just became however many there were. And because it was a central bank, they could make as many as they want to.
Right.
So essentially, the five things for money went null with fiat currency. 'Cause you can make as much as you want. It doesn't last very long. You can recognize it pretty easily, so that's still there. But
And it's reasonably portable,
usually portable.
not immensely portable.
Mhm.
Right.
So then, what if you're able to make a money that had all five of those things? And so that's where Bitcoin, as of now, hits all five of those markers as best of anything.
Okay.
So it's very portable. You can move Bitcoin across the world in 10 minutes with a very low cost of moving it. So
Okay.
like you could probably move like $1,000 for like $15 in Bitcoin. I think currently it changes based on how much you're sending stuff. If you to move gold from like one city in America to like Japan, let's say if you're moving $1 billion of gold, you probably would lose 20 million in that transaction. Just the amount that you would have to buy security, transportation, all those that would take that much energy to move it. 'Cause
Right.
it's so
Right.
much material.
Right. You have to charter a plane. You have to arrange a security detail. You have to get it through customs.
Mhm.
Right. You have to
So
pay the people who work at the monetary exchanges. Like like once you add it all up, it's like, oh wow, it costs a fair bit of money to move it.
Mhm. Like credit cards, for example, if you have $100 on a credit card, you can only move it 40 times and then your $100 is gone because of the surcharge fees.
Because everyone's taking a cut.
Yep.
Just-
It just goes away.
Money's just evaporating.
Mhm.
Wow. I mean, someone's getting a cut.
Yeah. So, but then if you made it so like everyone's keeping track of it to make sure this is real Bitcoin, then it's recognizable.
Okay.
It's distinct.
Mhm.
And then if you make it divisible to a very high amount, then it can keep going up in exponential value and you need less and less of it to buy the equivalent thing.
Okay. So in the early days it took $3. In the early days it took $3 to buy 3 Bitcoin. Oh man, so stuck in my ways.
No, you're good.
Yeah. So 3 Bitcoin to buy a ham sandwich.
Mhm.
Right. But now you could buy a ham sandwich with point zeros, 1 3, right?
Mhm.
You can still buy a ham sandwich.
Yeah.
And nobody cares, right? Because it's like, well, this is the current value of Bitcoin. So yeah, we can give them a ham sandwich for this much. Because
Mhm.
I can turn around and spend that same amount of Bitcoin on a gallon of gas,
Mhm.
right? Or whatever.
Exactly.
Okay. Right. And because it's on a digital system, the digital system doesn't care how thin you slice the fractions, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right now, you can divide one Bitcoin 100 million times.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a backwards protocol. So if we need it in the future at some point to make more divisions, you can make it even bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So then you have divisibility done.
Mm-hmm.
And then durability, if you have everyone in the network using Bitcoin, then everyone's putting a little bit of energy in to make sure this thing sticks around.
Okay.
So now it's durable based not on its own features, but because everyone values it. So
Mm-hmm.
everyone's going to make sure it stays around.
Okay.
And then we touch on divisibility and then scarcity. There's only 21 million of them.
Now, why is that? Yeah, I don't quite have even a layman's grasp of why there's a limit to it.
Because then at one certain point, it can't deflate in its own value. So because of another production of it, the same kind, it won't devalue what's already there. So like it essentially removes it from the commodity table.
Okay. And that's written into the software. There's some sort of limit on how many like how many 10-minute periods will ever be kept track of in history. Like,
So it'll stop issuing Bitcoin based on mining at a certain once they're all mined.
okay.
And then after that, people will earn money based on the fees of moving Bitcoin in the transaction system.
Okay.
So they'll still be mining and they'll still be making money by using the network.
Yep.
It's just instead of getting Bitcoin with their transaction fees, they'll just be paid in transaction fees.
Be paid in transaction fees, which in this case are slices of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Or which could be converted into US dollars
Mhm.
or Mexican pesos or British pounds. Right. All of these
Yeah.
have right. It has an exchange rate to each sovereign currency.
Mhm.
So okay, so again, so that's my question. So how does that work? Like who comes up with the generally accepted opinion of what a Bitcoin is worth in comparison to a US dollar or
Uh,
an Italian lira or or the euro, right? So how do you tie it to all us lay people running
yeah.
around?
It's essentially how the stock market is priced.
Mm-hmm.
So that's based on what people value it as. So it's conventional pricing.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with Bitcoin.
Okay.
People will buy it at the rate the exchange is selling it at. And if people aren't
Mm-hmm.
buying it, it'll drop. If people buy it more, it'll raise. So it's just how the stock market pricing function works essentially.
Okay. So, all right. So you're out there mining Bitcoin.
Hmm.
You're pooling together with other people, trying to basically win the lottery, right?
Hmm.
Man, we're trying to run the software protocol to record the exchanges correctly.
Hmm.
How so you say like how do you know or how does any software know, oh, those people over there, they recorded it correctly and not those fools over there? Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Like, right, like it's like who's this is a system that's sort of independent from authority. It seems like this is one of the way it's been sold, right? It's like it can't be corrupted because there's no authority that could be corrupted over it. But at the
Hmm.
same time, who's to be like, oh, those people got it,
Mm.
right?
I need to look into it more, but my understanding is there's certain markers, like
Uh-huh.
addresses that are moving Bitcoin. So if they don't have those certain markers,
Mm-hmm.
they're not a valid Bitcoin address, so it can't be moved there.
Okay.
And believe when you download the software, you download all the information from the past mining.
Uh-huh.
So your computer has the reference of all the Bitcoin and where it's all at.
Mm-hmm.
So if some like new Bitcoin enters a system that's not accounted for, it'll be rejected.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's my understanding. I need to look into it more. But
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Okay. Hmm. Okay. And but it's like any other collectible, I guess I'll say, like gold um or baseball cards or or
Mhm.
whatever, right? Like you can only go buy stuff with it if you can find someone with a good that you would like to acquire who will accept
Mhm.
some Bitcoin. And I assume they need to be set up in the network to accept that Bitcoin, right?
Mhm.
Like if I go to a car dealership and be like, hey man, I like that truck, I'll give you a Bitcoin for it. They couldn't accept my Bitcoin unless they had software that assigned to them a certain an IP address
Mhm.
to which Bitcoin could then be assigned.
Right.
Right. And this is why you see cafes, right? It's like, oh, we accept Bitcoin, right? Like they're set up to do this,
Mhm.
right? But not every merchant is. But
Mhm.
presumably in the future, many merchants could be.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. All right.
Mhm.
All right. This clears up a few questions.
Yeah.
Questions for me. Man,
Mhm.
gotta understand this stuff more. I'm just one of those people. It's like if it's not tangible in a certain way, I struggle to get my mind around it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
No, it's very new technology. It's only 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So it's uh we had a money system that was around for 5,000 years.
Uh-huh.
This is only around for 14.
Right, right.
So yeah,
The new kid on the block, quite
yeah.
literally. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
but yeah, it's essentially like in good investing is you invest in a scarceable asset.
Hmm. Right. Right.
So, because
Which
you,
is why everyone gets upset at counterfeiters because like
yeah,
you're corrupting the
mm,
scarcity. Right.
hence why inflation.
Hence inflation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. What is that doing? Yeah, no, it's doing terrible things to our money.
Yeah.
We all know it.
It's legalized counterfeiting.
But man, you know, you go to the bank, you get those nice crisp Benjis.
Yeah,
They feel great.
they do.
Yeah.
But really, they just stole money from everyone else. It was really sad.
I mean, I will credit myself with this. I mean, you know, even in 2020, you know, when those first bailouts came, I was like, yeah, I'm going to take the money. I'm going to spend it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I was like, this is not good.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, again, it's like I'm, you know, I can't stop it. So I better spend the money now.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
While it can buy a decent amount of stuff. I mean, honestly, that's what paid for the kitchen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All the granite. That
That's
is,
the-
that is 2020. You can thank COVID
Oh,
for my granite countertops. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say that. Yeah.
that was okay. Try to put it somewhere, you know.
Right. Right. But yeah, I mean, I just remember thinking, this is not good. This is not good. Don't do this. It may be politically expedient, but you know, on both sides of the aisle, I was like, don't do this. I was like, when Trump was doing it, I was like, don't do this, Donald. And then when Biden again did it again, you know, and they did it more, and it was like $1,400 or something like that. I was like, don't stop.
Yeah.
You can't, you're addicted. You're addicted to doing this, and it's not hurting it. And you think about those, you know, so what we got 600 from Trump. Again, we're single guys, so I'm assuming we got similar payouts, but you know,
Oh,
you
yeah,
got 600 from Trump, you got maybe 800 or whatever from Biden, you know, so 1,400 total. Now, just 2 years later, 3 years later, we've definitely paid that money back in what we've paid for groceries, what we've paid for travel.
Mhm.
Gas is weird. It's fluctuated, right? There are other factors in our fuel prices, but yeah, I mean, food, travel, um, a lot of services like staying at a hotel.
Mhm.
I mean, when I was in 2018, I could find a decent hotel for $100 a night. There's no way I could do that now.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah. So like, no one's talking about it, but how many times have we paid that money back
Mhm.
to other, you know, in other ways,
Mhm.
right? Eh, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Makes me. Uh
No, it's messed up.
huh.
It's like they essentially just scammed us with a a rigged sickness to
Hmm.
make the world go into fear, and then they used it to take away freedom, and then they used it to essentially put us into poverty by giving us money.
Isn't that the weirdest thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
You're right. That's a a funny and eloquent way to put it. Drive someone into poverty by giving them money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Isn't that weird?
it's very weird.
It is. Yeah. Right.
Because that's another basic law of economics is that money is created.
Hmm.
It's not a finite source. It's always increasing.
Right.
Because
Right.
every time you make a valuable product or service, you make money.
Right. Yeah, man, it'd be interesting to interview an economist because it's like, yeah, and again, we're talking pre-COVID, you know, and I would talk to guys, be like, oh yeah, like 2% inflation is healthy,
Hmm.
right? And again, from a layman's perspective, I'm like, all right, you're looking like, what is it? Is it South America? No, no, sorry, not South America. Excuse me, South Africa, where it's like, again, you know, our audience, please feel free to correct me if I'm getting the country or the currency incorrect, but it's something like the dollar is worth like 40,000, you know, South African dollars or so, you know, something crazy like that. Right. Where like, you know, how much does a hotel cost for one night? It's like it costs 1.5 million. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So it's like just from a sort of reasonable human perspective, I can understand wanting uh to keep the amount that we spend sort of on human scale numbers, you know what I mean? Rather than like, you know, on one hand, you know, if we had 19, if we still had like 1920s dollars in an economy the size of ours today, right? You know, the population's 4 times bigger. The amount of goods exchanged is X many times bigger, right? If we had 1920s dollars, I mean, we'd be spending like 100th of a penny, for certain goods. And I think I can understand saying like, okay, this will get weird if we don't have some moderate inflation.
Mhm.
But and an economy does grow, like as a population grows, like there
Mhm.
is more value in an economy with more people and more goods and more services. Uh, so I can understand wanting to increase the money supply, so to speak. But maybe that's not the whole picture. Maybe I'm
Yeah,
misunderstanding something. Man, do we know any economists here in Lander?
that's a
We
good
got to get,
question.
yeah, got to get them. We got to get them on the cast.
We do.
Yeah, yeah. Explain this to us. Oh,
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it seems like it makes sense.
hmm,
I guess it's still like at the cost of taking 2% of everyone's wealth every year.
right.
So
Which
it's
doesn't
like,
sound great
yeah,
either. Right.
because I mean, it's like if you, Michael Saylor put it this way, is like if you were trying to get ready to run a race, but someone took a pint of your blood every month, would you ever run a race? And it's like, probably not.
Right. Hmm.
But he said that's essentially what inflation is. He's like, the system's taking a pint of your blood.
Hmm.
You can't say no to it.
Right.
So you have to work extra hard to make up for your pint of blood lost.
Yeah.
And it's just going somewhere where you have no idea where it goes.
Right. Uh, and again, I'm thinking out loud here. I'm just wondering, okay, so are the real beneficiaries of inflation um, people who actually debt then becomes advantageous in a high inflation market, right?
Mhm.
Like presumably there will come a day when I pay my mortgage the way I pay my gym membership, right? Like if inflation continues, there'll be a day when I pay in dollars almost as much for a gym membership as I do to have a house,
Yeah.
right? If I keep this house for 30 years, right? Presumably I'll buy another one and then I'll have to pay three times what I paid for this one. And, so I'm paying that many more dollars. But
Yeah.
like you think about like if you go into debt, right, you sort of freeze the value of the dollar on the
Mm.
day when you take that debt out, right? Right.
Mm.
Again, like if you take out a $250,000 loan and your interest rate is X amount, and I mean, frankly, this is what I tell people who are thinking about getting into the rental market. Like, man, should I buy a rental? I did the numbers, blah, blah, blah. It cost me 1,200 a month to have the thing, and I could probably only charge 1,300 a month for rent. And, I'm pretty honest with them. I was like, guys, if you take that debt out, you're going to lock in the value of the dollar today, sort of in reverse, right? You're
Mm.
going to have to pay 12. You can take a mortgage out for your rental property. You're going to have to pay 1,200 a month every month for the next 30 years. But in 30 years, if current inflation trends continue, in 30 years, you're going to be paying 1,200 bucks a month for like a family dinner, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like you're gonna laugh about paying 1,200 a month to own a house. Your rent at that by year 30, what you're gonna be charging in rent could be like 5,000 a month, right? And so this is what I say to people who are thinking about getting into the rental market. It's like, yeah, if it's an asset, if it'll produce income for you, as long as you can make it work in the early years, if we're assuming inflation,
That's interesting. Yeah.
you should really think about doing it,
Yeah.
right?
Huh.
So yeah. So I'm just wondering, okay, so can we conclude that holders of debt are the real beneficiaries of inflation? And I think as long as your interest rate isn't heinous, I think you could argue that it is.
Mm.
But then my question then becomes like, okay, who's holding all this debt?
Probably all the banks.
Well, okay, so you're an investment bank. Let's think through this. You're an investment bank. You borrow $200 million at an advantageous interest rate. I don't know who you borrow it from, other banks, the government. You borrow it. right? Then you can lend it out at your own interest rate forever. And for the time that you hold that note, or sorry, for the time that your creditors hold that note, you just have to make payments, right? But you can collect your own interest at a higher interest rate. And if going one step farther, if you're in a system with fractional reserve banking, right? So you've been given a loan of 200 million. You also have some deposits from your customers. So let's say you're sitting on 300 million in assets. So yes, you have this liability, this debt that you owe to whoever gave you the money. But if you can lend out that money 10 to 1, all of a sudden having debt's a great idea, right? Because if I can take $1, if I can borrow $1, but then lend $1 to 10 people and they have to pay me interest on it. Yeah, of course I'm going to borrow that dollar. Of course I am. Because I can lend $1 to 10 more people.
Yeah.
And and in 30 years, they'll have paid me in 30 years, they will all have given me $3, right? So I've made $30 by borrowing $1. And yeah, maybe my interest payments, blah, blah, blah. So maybe by the end of that 30 years, I've paid $3 of my own, but I've made $30.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's
So yeah, so I kind of wonder if that's so. So could you say that a combination of fractional reserve banking and inflation are advantageous to? That's what's advantageous to the investment firms, investment bankers. You know who would know about this? We got to get Sarah Cooper on here. She would know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. She worked for Goldman Sachs for years. So,
She would be interesting to have.
oh yeah,
That would be very interesting.
yeah.
Because it seems like it's essentially you're borrowing someone's money to print money at their own expense.
Right. So you're borrowing money so that you can make your own money making machine. Right?
Exactly.
You want to build a money making machine. So,
But it's like if you're giving out $10 to $1 you actually have, then it's like, well, where are those $9 coming from?
Right. 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 And well, again, I'm not an accountant and I'm not in banking. So again, I'm very happy to be corrected on this. But if
Same.
if I understand correctly, you loan out that dollar to 10 different people on your books, you can claim, oh yeah, I have this dollar of debt to the person who gave me money, but you can actually claim $9 in assets. Right. So, oh yeah, what are my assets? Well, my assets are yeah, I've got I got $9. But I only have $1 of debt. So I'm doing great.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and I do believe this is what caused a huge problem in 2008 is that all of these bonds were sold with all these bonds were sold with the idea that over time they'll generate X amount of income, right? But then they turned out to be absolute garbage. But all of these people had been counting them as assets, right? So these banks went bankrupt because they had all these assets. It's actually when it was proven that all these assets were total garbage. Actually, no, these banks have a lot of debt they need to answer for.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
That is wild.
Right, and no one will give them money, right? Because yeah, so like one bank borrows from another bank, and then they have to pay that first bank back. So then you go to a third bank and say, hey, can I borrow some money from you guys so I can pay back Bank A? And normally that's no problem because, well, sure, I'll lend you another dollar because you have $9 in assets. Like, what's the problem? But then if that third bank doesn't want to lend to bank number two because they suspect that their assets are garbage, well, then all of a sudden the bank collapses.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, 2008 was a really interesting time.
Was.
If you were in a spaceship or a time machine, you know what I mean? If you weren't affected by it,
Yeah.
it's really interesting to watch.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. It's like, what would our country look like if we didn't have fractional reserve banking and the central bank? Like, what if all of our assets were true assets that weren't based on debt? Just think of how much wealth it would have. Like, for instance, um, this is one metric, but if we had kept certain federal regulations the same since World War II till now,
Mm-hmm.
I think this was a lot to do with business related things. Trump made a law that for every new regulation passed, two had to be revoked. It was so effective that it was on average 21 were revoked.
Interesting. Interesting.
But he had a pile of like World War II and it was like this tall.
Uh-huh.
It's like this tall.
Yep.
And then all of the new regulations was just like a whole two walls of papers. All these
Mm-hmm.
new regulations that have come since World War II.
Mm-hmm.
If you had kept the regulations the same and that whatever metric that was from World War II till now, there's an estimated amount of income per capita in America would be 350 grand per year. So our annual income would be 7 times what it is currently off of one metric.
Hmm.
So that isn't bringing in taxes, that isn't bringing in inflation, that isn't bringing in lost value to like stolen goods from other countries or any of that stuff.
Uh-huh.
So in reality, it's very possible that each person could be making $2 million on average a year.
A day? Woo!
A day.
Sign me up.
Yeah. So,
Oh.
but it's wild. It's like,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah, I'd want to know more details.
yeah,
Again, it. I'm not saying that regulation hasn't had a big effect. I would want to know, just see the chain of reasoning that
right.
these people have.
Mhm.
I'd be interested in knowing more.
Yeah,
What's the, yeah.
yeah. Well, and there's another thing that Michael Saylor was saying is like if you, 'cause he said America is about 30% free.
Mm-hmm.
He said that's more free than any other country in history.
Okay.
So he's like, that freedom gave us this. But he said if we were truly free
Hmm.
and we could produce the way we want to in our economy, he said our GDP would go from like 3 trillion a year to 30 trillion a year. He said we could
Pay off the national debt.
in a year. Could you imagine? Like 10x
Right, right. Well,
a
right.
year.
So then the question. Okay, assuming those things are true, the question is, who stands to benefit from keeping the first two rungs of the economic ladder? You know, the working poor and the working class. Right.
Mhm.
Who stands to benefit from keeping them right where they are?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah, it's a good question. It's essentially whoever is in charge of the new money,
Mm-hmm.
because they can put it towards wherever they want
Mm-hmm.
without anyone saying no.
Mm-hmm.
So like the war in Iraq was all inflation based primarily.
Inflation base. Say more. Say more.
Well, I heard that they paid the war off with inflation.
Uh huh.
Like if you would have paid the war with actual taxes, it would have been a bill of like 80,000 per taxpayer.
And then people would have been like, "Yeah, I don't like Saddam Hussein, but
That's a
the
lot.
hell we're doing that."
Yeah.
Right.
So exactly. But if you do it as inflation, it's invisible. People don't feel it right then. They will feel it for a long time
Hmm.
afterwards. So it's a very
That's a
interesting.
little dark, man.
It's a little dark.
I mean, yeah, I mean, just think of how staunchly the conservative base supported Bush too, back in the early 2000s. Whereas like now, 20 years later, you kind of look at his presidency and you're like,
Yeah.
do you really, yeah, there were some social issues that conservatives agreed with his general stance on, but then you're like, yeah, you just kind of question,
There's a
was
lot of strange stuff happening.
right. Was Bush two's presidency really good for America?
I would say no.
It's tough to admit. Yeah, it's again, it might be tough to say that because again, we grew up in the families with the W stickers on the bumper,
Hmm.
the bumper stickers with the W and the you know the the hoorah rah
Hmm.
for a more conservative social outlook,
Hmm.
right? Which was certainly part of the platform that got him elected twice,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, did what what did we gain in those 8 years?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not saying
Yeah.
nothing. I'm not saying, again, I was young, but I'm saying it's worth asking.
It is.
Yeah.
Essentially made the Middle East very angry at us.
Yeah.
And then and we lost a lot of lives making them angry at us.
Mm. Yeah. What's
And
the
they're-
total? The total for Iraq and Afghanistan, is it like 6,000 servicemen?
I think that's
6,000, 9,000?
I'm not sure, but it sounds right.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, Biden's exit from Afghanistan was a total cluster, but
Hmm.
I do think it needed to be done on some terms, right? You had to get out of there because it's money and men and money and men and blood and tears, and but man, talk about a I was talking with a priest we both know. No, Father James. I don't think he'll mind being mentioned on the cast. And I was like, and when it was happening, it was August of 2022.
Mm.
Okay, I was like, look, I'm not arguing with the fact that the lease was up and we needed to exit the apartment, but there's a difference between packing up your stuff and moving out and bringing in garbage from the streets, spreading it around the apartment, and setting it all on fire, and then leaving all your stuff there when you move out.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I mean, again, I mean, I have some criticisms of the Republican side, but I also have some criticisms of the Democratic side, and the Democratic side kept saying, "Oh yeah, we needed to exit Afghanistan. We needed to exit Afghanistan." It's like, yeah, I don't think anyone's questioning that.
Yeah.
No one was saying we needed to be in that house. It was when we when we brought in the garbage and set the thing on fire
Yeah.
and left without our stuff. That's what we're upset about.
Exactly.
No one was saying we didn't need to move.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Anyway, yeah. Well, we'll see how that. Have you been following election processes? I guess I'll call them much in the last few weeks.
Oh, fair bit.
Okay. What are your thoughts?
So for ours or just global?
Well, I mean, I'm definitely interested in both, but let's start with the U.S. election, right? I mean, what do you think of DeSantis withdrawing? What do you think of Trump's performance in primaries, being kicked off the ballot in some states?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that Trump is on a good. I think most good people want Trump back in the office.
Interesting. Okay.
Especially I think a lot of Democrats are starting to sway. Just from what I've seen online from influencers and kind of like the outrage certain people are having, like even Cardi B is saying Biden is not smart.
Okay. Okay.
So she is saying he's not smart.
I'm not intimately familiar with the details of Cardi B's
Yeah, well,
political leanings, but
yeah. But like Lil Wayne,
Mhm.
50 Cent, Snoop Dogg, they're all for Trump now. Waka Flocka Flame. I mean, they're all for Trump.
Okay. Okay.
So
All right.
you're
I got to
having,
pull up these artists. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm uninitiated.
I've only heard their names really,
Okay.
but so they're all going for Trump.
Uh-huh.
I've seen there's the younger generation is swaying towards Trump
Hmm.
because I think the media tries to make it think that we're dumb and we don't want Trump.
Okay.
I think a lot of people want him because I mean, if you look at his rallies,
Uh-huh.
he can fill standing room only and have miles of people outside wherever he's at.
Mm.
No one gets even close to that. No one else.
Uh-huh.
And so if you have that just in these spots he goes to, then there's probably a large populace that's for him.
Right. Right.
And I think if you notice who he's running against, a lot of these other candidates were very two-faced.
Okay.
They weren't really for the American interests.
Mm-hmm.
So like DeSantis, you start looking at who was paying his campaign, who he was supported by,
Okay.
whoever got his shoes for him. Like this man is very he's putting on a show, I think.
Interesting.
Like
Okay.
you saw the elevator shoes, right?
No. No.
Okay. Yeah, he wore these.
Fill me in.
Phil wore these like elevator boots that give him like 6 inches in height.
Okay, okay. For
So
like some rally or something like that.
yeah, like on interviews and stuff, like he's trying to make himself look taller.
6 inches. Okay, so he's wearing high heels,
Yeah,
but they're cut to make it look like regular shoes.
exactly.
And he's wearing like flowy pants to
Kind of flowy.
kind of
Hide it, yeah.
cover it a little bit
Yeah, he's wearing cowboy boots
with like
black.
big, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
So like, that's what everyone thinks it is because it's just the way his foot looks and the way his everything looks. It looks like he's wearing heels. So you have someone who's that insecure about their height
Hmm.
trying to run for president,
Okay.
and then you find out that some of his supporters are part of the January 6th committee and stuff like that, and so you're
Hmm.
like, very interesting. Like, who is his real supporters? And then you have people like saying a lot of the stuff he wants to do isn't really good, like raising the minimum retirement age from 65 to 70.
In order to collect Social Security, you have to be 70.
Hmm. So, but things like
I
that,
mean, Social Security is in so much trouble.
right?
I wonder if any reasonable person would say, well, if we want to keep the fund non-defunct, we're going to have to say 70.
Yeah.
More people paying in, less people paying out. They're counting on people dying before they ever collect.
Hmm.
Uh, I'm not saying that's great for anybody, right? I could see that move being made from either side of the aisle.
Exactly.
Because I can imagine if I were president, someone sitting me down and be like, all right, look, here's how it is.
Yeah.
If we keep handing out checks for Social Security to people who are 65 and above, we're going to be out of money by 2030 or
Hmm.
2032. If we go to 70, if our model suggests that we can make it to 2050, and any reasonable politician says, well, I'm not going to be running for president in 2050.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, stuff like that, and like Nikki Haley, have you
Mhm.
seen her like flip back and forth on what she believes is
I've
true?
heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've people have told me that,
Hmm.
but I have not followed her closely enough.
And in the New Hampshire primary, um, most of her votes were Democrats.
Huh.
Because in that primary, Democrats could vote for both sides in the primary.
The theory being that, all right, we want to vote for Nikki Haley, get her to the front of the Republican ballot. We just gotta bump Trump out. Right. Like anything to keep Trump from running again.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's interesting. Why is he the only one they're scared of?
Mm. Right. We'll take DeSantis. We'll take Nikki Haley. We don't want them to win, but it's sort of like it's an in-game outcome. Like
Yeah.
it's like, all right, this is these people, they're gonna run their team. We're gonna run against them, but it's in our stadium, playing by our rules. Trump is the guy they see as like he's gonna knock the stadium over and not even play. He's not even playing the game. He's here to level the playing. He's here to literally level the stadium, level the playing field.
Yeah.
No one's like, no, we're making a lot of money playing this game. We want to win, but as long as we play, we still maintain a significant amount of power, even if occasionally the other team wins.
Yeah.
We're still in our stadium playing by our rules.
Exactly.
That's sounding good.
So it's interesting, like why he's the only one they go after with all these indictments and
Mm,
lawsuits and this and that, and it's all based on false evidence, and they're doing crooked things to get stuff at him. Like that one lawyer trying to devalue Mar-a-Lago to $18 million.
hmm.
Anyone in the right mind would say it's more than 18. It was when it went for sale in the 80s. I
Uh-huh.
think it was listed at 50 million.
Huh. Uh-huh.
So there's no way it dropped 3 times its value over 50 years.
Right. In Florida?
And it's a palace
Right. A mansion in Florida.
in Florida and the
Right.
prime real estate.
Yeah. Losing value
Yeah.
in the last 40 years. No way.
So they try
Huh.
to do that and they try to say like he's falsifying his net worth. Well, he didn't. He probably undervalued himself. And it's a speculation. It's
Hmm.
not like hard set numbers.
Yeah.
So it's not like there's anything there. And
Hmm.
then this Fannie Willis person trying to indict him in Georgia and finding out that she was in another case and her boyfriend was I believe in contempt of court for a year
Hmm.
with this case, and then
Hmm.
he was using money from her paycheck essentially, from taxpayer dollars to go on vacations and things like that. So
Right.
you're like, these people are not upstanding citizens.
Huh.
So
Huh.
you
It's
look
a
at,
full contact sport for sure. Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, why are they afraid of him?
Hmm.
It's like probably because he's a real threat to their establishment.
Hmm. Well, I think that is true. Right. I mean, Bush got attacked. McCain got attacked. Uh, yeah. Again, it's not like during when the game is played in the regular season game is played. It's not like each side is not trying to win the game, right? It is their field, it is their rules, but they are trying to win, right?
Mhm.
And it is a full contact sport, right? I mean, if it had been Jeb Bush in 2016, they would have gone after Jeb Bush. But it's hard to argue that they would have gone after Jeb Bush like this, right? Or McCain like this. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's unending. Like they've been doing it since he came down the elevator.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that weird? Yeah. That's so weird.
And I mean, like,
It's just a weird time to be in politics because I remember people saying like amidst when Trump began running early on in 2015, right? 2015 he announced his candidacy. Right. People are like, yeah. You know what? It's gonna be Hillary versus Jeb.
yep,
Right. People were saying that. It's gonna be Hillary versus Jeb. And their argument is because it's always the same old people. It's the same old people who went to the right schools and got into power through these channels. And yeah, they're on different teams, but they got into the stadium and they've been given a rule book, and it's going to be these people again.
yeah,
So yeah, so I mean, the fact that he won, I mean, is yeah, it was the greatest upset in American politics. Is it? I think it's true to say that.
I would say that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of other upsets. Truman was a bit of an upset. Uh, Lincoln, I think you could argue, was an upset in certain
Yeah,
ways. Yeah, well, yeah.
it's interesting.
Yeah, when we have Father James on,
Oh yeah,
we're gonna be asking him about this. What was the greatest upset in presidential elections in history? Yeah. So
it is interesting. Patrick, but Dave, I don't know if you saw this, said that there's going to be 40 elections across the world this year.
uh-huh.
I think he said the most in history.
Uh-huh.
That's a lot of elections. Like
Yeah.
I just saw this past week, um, they reelected the president of El Salvador.
Yep.
The guy's really been putting the smackdown on bad things down there.
El Salvador, when I was in Belize years ago, people would say El Salvador is one of the most corrupt and dangerous countries in all of the Spanish speaking world. Right. So Central America, South America. Um, Yeah, I knew. Yeah, in the school I was teaching at, we had some, as far as I could tell, they were like real refugees
Mm,
from El Salvador. Right, it was a mom, I think two boys. Yeah, I have no idea where the dad was. So, but I mean, honestly, that's actually pretty common
mm,
in many parts of Central America.
mm,
You have these moms raising kids, and it's like, where's the dad? It could be anything. Killed in a gang war, just left the family one day. Just no one knows. It's not that he even left. He just never came home one day. Or he works up, or he went to America and he works up in America. And, and hopefully if it's the best outcome is he's sending money back.
mhm,
But yeah, it was very common.
mhm,
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's common here in the States too. A lot of single motherhood is certainly at an all-time high in the history of our country.
mhm.
Yeah. So, but anyway, yeah. But El Salvador, it had a terrible reputation.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's
well,
like, oh, don't go to El Salvador, man. Yeah. Yeah.
that's not the place to be.
Yeah. So yeah. Right. Right. It's a lot of places you can go and relax and enjoy some good things to see. El Salvador is not one. Yeah, and of course that's what people say. It was interesting when I was in Belize. It was Belize is divided it's on the western side of the country, it's a largely Hispanic population, and on the eastern side of the country, the coastal side of the country, largely Creole population.
Hmm.
Basically descendants of Africans. Um, and so it's so funny because I landed in Belize City and then rode in a bus, I should say, rode in a bus across the country. And just the way the other people on the bus changed
Hmm.
just in that trip across the country, because we just drove west, right? And so when I got on, it was like probably 85% people of African descent, 85% easily. And then by the time I was done, it was like 70% people of Guatemalan or other Hispanic descent. And it's just very gradually, like each bus stop, it just shifts a little bit.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you start the bus ride and everyone's speaking either English or Creole, basically. And by the time you're done, um, almost everyone's speaking Spanish. It was very,
Hmm.
yeah, it was very interesting to
That's
watch it.
interesting.
But
Yeah.
anyway, so Patrick Bet David was talking about an election in El Salvador that has already happened.
Well, yeah, I just saw that actually on the social channels last week that he got reelected, and he's been doing really good things on there.
Okay.
He's been trying to put down the smackdown on MS-13 and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then I don't know if you saw the new president of Argentina. Oh
Uh
yeah,
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 yeah.
Javier Milei.
Javier Milei. Yes,
Yeah.
I've actually that I can actually say I followed fairly closely because I was listening to a lot of his speeches.
Mm.
Yeah. Um yeah, I can't say that I understood every word he was saying, but
He talks
but
fast.
in my defense, we should talk to some Argentinians, see if they understand every word that he's been saying. He
Yeah.
does talk. He talks fast and with energy. So
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. It's his more public. Sorry, his more uh state uh state addresses have been much calmer, right? When he's sitting in the chair and making an address to the state, it is more formal. It is more formal language and everything. So yeah, we'll see. I'm very, very curious.
He seems like he's doing a good job. I don't know if you saw that one video of him when he was talking about all the departments of government he wants to get rid of.
Mm,
He just tears off the wall like, "Afuye!
yeah,
Afuye!"
yeah, yeah. I did see part of that. Yeah, he was maybe it was a different presentation, but he had like a whiteboard up or like a smart board, and had the huge branch of all these government branches, and he was just crossing them off left and
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
I
yeah.
heard he did it. Apparently, I heard there was a news story that he cut the departments of the government from 21 to 9 in his first week.
I don't know. Yeah,
But
I do have a friend in Argentina,
really,
so we should get her on the cast.
that would be cool. We should do that.
It would have to be remote,
Yeah, do that.
unless we wanted to fly her up here. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's Preble's sister.
Oh,
Yeah. Gala. Yeah,
oh,
man.
interesting.
Am I allowed to mention all these people's names on here?
I
Yeah.
think so.
Hopefully we're not causing them any distress
I
in
don't
their
think
daily
so.
lives. Yeah.
Well, I don't think so.
Yeah. No, she'd be great. Yeah.
It'd be really
Yeah.
interesting.
She's in Argentina now. Yeah, it'd be great. Yeah, she'd have a really insightful perspective. She's really smart too.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, could you tell me a little bit about your trip down south to Guatemala?
Yeah, absolutely. It was great. It was great. I really wish I could have stayed longer. Yeah, it turns out that you can't become fluent in Spanish in a week.
Oh,
Um, but yeah, man, I hadn't been down there for 12 years. So I was down there for a year. That was some of the things about Belize I was mentioning. So I was down there for a year, but it was like right after college. So it had been over a
mm,
decade since I'd been back. I'd been to Mexico. But Mexico is Mexico is a part of North America. It's and it's got its own rhythm. It's so tied into the American tourist system. It just feels a little different. Um, And then Belize, of course, its national language is English. But then to go into Guatemala, uh, where I'm going to say 98% of the population doesn't speak any functional English. They might know a
Wow.
few words, right? Dude, hey, um, what's up? Um, but yeah, so to go into that total immersion environment was great. And for as limited as my Spanish still is, it was it was a great learning experience to be in a place where every interaction you have to use as best Spanish. You can have to use Spanish to the best of your ability because no one's going to bail you out because they know English.
Mm.
So it's tough. But on the other hand, like my brother was in Italy for years, and he said, man, it's so tough to learn Italian because you hit people with that American accent. They know you speak good English. They know some English, their English is better than your Italian. Plus, they also want to practice English,
Oh.
right? So not only is it faster for them to speak English, but they're also motivated to speak English because they want to practice, which I can understand that.
Mhm.
So then, so to be in Guatemala really was great for my Spanish because every bartender, every store person at the store, every bus driver, you have to figure it out in Spanish.
Mm.
So there were, I'm sure it's so funny. Have you ever noticed this? Like when someone is speaking in a second language, a non-native language to them, we do, it's weird. We sort of assume they're dumb. Like
Yeah.
we assume that they're like a child. Yeah, dumb's
Yeah.
maybe not the right word. We assume a sort of childlike quality to them, right? So so to be on the receiving end of that experience, right, where people are trying to explain stuff to me and I look like a child. It's good for you. It's good for you just on
Mm.
that level to look
Yeah.
like a fool. Um, but again, for the progress in Spanish that I was looking for, it was a really good country to go to because no one was there who could bail me out. If I had gone to Spain, probably I wouldn't have done nearly as I wouldn't have gained nearly as much because if I understand correctly, 70% of Spaniards speak very, very functional
Mm.
English. Um, so it would have been just a lot harder because there would have been all sorts of interactions that would have reverted to English. Um, but even the teachers I was with, I found this interesting. So I was doing this, I was with this tutoring program. I would meet with them for like 5 hours a day and just speak in Spanish, do exercises in Spanish. It was kind of a split between just talking in Spanish and doing like book work, right? Out of a textbook. But they don't speak any English.
Oh.
Yeah. So like you hit kind of this dead point.
Kinda
You're
figure it
kind of
out.
stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the Google Translate helps a bit, of
Oh.
course, right? You can pull something up on your phone. You're looking for the word for hummingbird. Yeah. Hummingbird. Translate. Right. Um, so so there were a few moments like that where it was just like, man, we probably would be moving a little faster if they could just give me the word. But on the balance, because they could only use Spanish, it forced me to improve more, I
Mm.
believe.
Mhm.
So I would take that again in a heartbeat. Just total immersion. There's no parachute. There's no way out.
Mm.
Um, yeah, yeah. But yeah, it was a beautiful country.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. I was in a little town called Melchor, which is right on the border. And I have friends. So I have friends who live in Belize, right on their border town, which is called Benque.
Mm.
So I was in Benque with friends, and then we crossed over the border with them. My buddy, his name is Victor. Um, he was born in Guatemala. Um, so he crossed over with me, got me kind of onto the right bus
Mhm.
to this town, Flores, which is where the school was.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, so where I'm driving in this little bus, it was like a Sprinter van. It was like a 12 passenger van at best. We had 26 people. Yeah, I know. I mean, like we were packed to the gills. I mean, we probably had like 19 people in there. And I was sitting there and we'd see people on the side of the road and they're kind of waving down, they want the ride on the bus. And I was like, we've got 19 people on here in a 12 passenger van. Like we're full. We're done. we're done.
Yeah.
Nope. The driver would pull over, 3 more people would get on. I'm like, okay, we got 22 people on this bus. Like, we're full. We're done. We're driving down the road and like there's a pack of school children. Like we're talking like 8 kids all on the side of the road. They're waving down the bus. So I'm like, we're not going to take the whole group, of course. So we're just going to keep going. We're going to drive. But no, we stop. The bus driver gets out. He goes around. He like starts talking to this pack of school children. I can't, again, this was the way in. My Spanish was limited anyway. But nonetheless, I couldn't even really hear, even if it was in English, I couldn't hear that well. So this is a guess. But I'm presuming what he was asking was, which of you needs to get down the road the worst? Who needs to go? So he packs in another 4 people. Right. So we're going down the road with 26 people on this bus. Like I'm like crammed into a corner. Like I'm turning around. I'm like counting heads. And I'm like, dang, we have 26 people on this bus. Like, I'm like, how do the shocks even survive? Like, how are we even making it over the bumps? Right. And it's not like these roads are super smooth and flat. We're going up hills. We're going down into, gullies. Right. There are potholes. I mean, so finally we get to the next village and we let off like 3 people. I'm like, oh, we can breathe again. And then I'm like, wait a minute. We still got 23 people on this bus. So I guess um well, for the Spanish speakers out here, especially my Spanish tutors, forgive me if I butcher this, but I think they call it like the pollo colectiva, like the chicken bus.
The chicken.
They just pack them in like chickens.
Wow.
And sometimes you have chickens. Which actually was something I experienced in Belize, like driving down the road and people just are sitting there with their chicken. But the other really funny thing is, they're very young, Belize and Guatemala, very young countries. Frankly, the rate of teenage pregnancy is very high. In Belize, something like 40 to 50% of the population is below the age of 18. I mean, we're talking a very young population. So the women I was talking to, friends and just, other women I ran into, they told me, if you're a woman, it's not at all uncommon for like you're at a bus stop or something, for a mother with their 1-year-old, their 2-year-old, whatever, to just hand you their baby so that they can run and like grab water or use the restroom real quick or something like that. Like it's like they've all experienced it. They're just sitting on the bus and some mom comes down the aisle and is like, here, just hold my baby. I'll be right back. Right.
That's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there's this just assumption that, yeah, it's like, what's going to happen? And I said, well, geez, have they seen Sound of Freedom? Like, yeah, geez, what are you guys doing? Yeah. So, yeah, so it was a really great week. Guatemala, beautiful country. And a lot of farms. So it's kind of this split between like agricultural environments and jungle. But where I was Flores. It's this island in the middle of a lake with one bridge. And so there's this island in the middle of the lake, and then it's surrounded by all these towns and villages on the sides of the lake, right? San Benito, San Miguel, Flores. And so there's the one bridge, and you can cross that by foot, or they've got these little taxis called tuk-tuks, and it's these like it looks like you remember Cozy Coops? Do you have Cozy Coops as a kid? The little like Fisher Price, like a Fisher Price little car. You would just and you would just like move it with your feet. Oh yeah. So imagine like a big tricycle with an engine with a Cozy Coop like mounted to the back. Right. So the driver just sits there and drives the tricycle basically, and you sit in this little cab in the back, and they call it a tuk-tuk. And that's how you get around the island is in these little cabs. So anyway, so you can use this bridge, but then everywhere else, like if you want to get over to San Miguel, you go down to the edge of the lake and you just walk down to the dock and you just wait for a lancha to come by, a launch, a little boat, and you just pay your $2 and you hop on this wooden boat and he turns around and he just and he just drives you to the village that you're trying to get to, and he pulls up to another little dock, and you just hop off, and you're on your way. It's fun.
That
Yeah,
sounds
it's
fun.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful lake, beautiful setting. These green hills, with this big lake that goes out in every direction. But one day, this is kind of goes back to the currency thing. It's $2 American, if that, but it's like $10. It's 10 quetzales,
Mm,
right? This comes out to like $1.50 or something like that, like
mm,
$1.50. It's not much,
yeah.
but again, but you get into a country, the numbers of the currency start to feel like the numbers you should be like using in your head. So 10 quetzales, 10 quetzales. I can't spend 10 quetzales to like get across the lake. It's $1.50.
Oh,
But one day I was like, I'm not spending 10 quetzales. So
oh,
I swam across the lake.
how big is this lake?
It, it's it's a big lake. The island that I was on to the little village I was swimming to was not that far. Like
Okay.
my sister, who's a very good swimmer, I mean, I'm sure she'd bang it out in a second. I'm not a great swimmer. So like I took my wet bag, and I just filled it up with air, wrapped it over. So I had this little this quick and dirty life preserver, this wet bag filled with air. I took my black belt from jiu-jitsu and just made it like a harness and just tied
Oh,
my wet bag to my black belt and just hopped in the lake and just swam across.
that's awesome.
Again, yeah, like maybe you and I should go there and you can see the distance that I actually swam. It's not that impressive. But let me tell you, I was tired. Yeah, I was tired. Yeah, swimming's hard, man.
It is.
So anyway, so I get to the other side and I put stuff in my bag, like my hiking boots and socks and everything. So like I pull all this stuff out of my bag and then I go for this hike up these hills with my soaking wet black belt. It's so humid down there. It took like 3 days for my black belt to dry out.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's so humid there. Yeah, it's so yeah. Compared to Wyoming, I mean, it was like,
Oh,
what's our humidity here? Like 10%, 15%. It's like 95% there. It was wild. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, really great experience. I mean,
mm.
shout out to Dos Mundos language school. We'd appreciate a sponsorship.
Yeah.
No, it was fun. I mean, the school, man and wife own a bar, but it's like a 3-story bar. So you can, so the third story, you're up on this deck, you can see the lake, great sunsets. I mean, it overlooks the western sky. I mean, great spot. But it's this 3-story building, so it's like offices, kitchen, and some other rooms, and then like the bar and like
Mm,
the actual like eating area. So the second story, they're not really doing anything with it most of the day. So that's where they have the language school.
mm.
So it took me a while to actually find the school because they don't have any signs or anything. It's all the signs for the bar, the Sky Bar,
Oh,
right?
interesting.
Yeah. So I got to the island. I'm looking around. The head of the school he was sick that day. So he couldn't meet me. So I'm wandering around trying to find the school. And it turns out I had wandered into the building and left thinking, well, this is a bar. I must be in the wrong spot. Right. But
Hmm.
it turns out, yeah, that's where they have the school, is because during the day before the restaurant opens, first 5 hours of the day, 8 to 1. Well,
Yeah.
you might as well make some money with some Spanish students. And
Yeah.
then in the afternoon, they can sit around and drink at your bar.
That's a pretty genius plan.
Oh, it was great. Yeah,
Yeah.
I might have spent, I'd have to look at the exchange rate, those quetzales, but I might have spent more at the bar than I did at the school.
Well, yeah, it's like, well, I can just sit here and do homework till the bar
Mhm.
opens up and then
Exactly. Oh, and that's
locals.
precisely what I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So hoping to go back maybe October.
Okay. Yeah.
They tell me that June, July, and August are genuinely tough there because I mean it's a nearly equatorial country, but
Mm.
it's still north. So yeah, the summer is really brutal there, from what everyone told me. I mean, so I was there last month, January.
Okay.
Dude, go to Guatemala in January. It was
Mm.
great. I mean, it was humid. Don't get, yeah, it was humid, but it was like, 85 to 95,
It's not bad.
which, really very, very tolerable if you're
Yeah.
sitting at the Sky Bar
Yeah.
drinking cold beer with a fan.
That sounds very nice.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and then the most cultural thing I did was I went 2 days, 2 afternoons. I went to Mayan ruins and explored Mayan
Oh,
ruins in Tikal. Um, and then again, right near San Miguel, this little village, there it's an active archaeological site where they're literally in the process of unburying these old Mayan sites. And so the head of the school, guy named Dieter, cool guy, um, is friends with the head of the archaeological dig. So he got us this basically this private tour.
wow.
Yeah, yeah. And so this archaeology student gave us this tour of the site, uh, and explained the different cultures that had the different phases of the Mayan culture when they were at their apex, when they had their fall, and like many non-Western cultures, they never really tear anything down. They just build on top of it. Right. And so you'll have you'll have huts on top of a palace, which is on top of huts, right? Which is on top of a wall, right? It's these, yeah. It's
Yeah,
very interesting.
that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
So did you get to see some like pretty cool things that they uncovered?
Yeah, I should shoot you some pictures after this. Yeah, I mean, we in Tikal, an actual developed archaeological site that's now open for tourists. Um, yeah, we went up these pyramids that the pyramids, let's see, I think they were, oh shoot, I really hope I don't butcher this in meters. I think the pyramids were between 100 and 200 meters tall.
Wow.
So so sizable in their
Big.
own right. I mean, you're like, whoa. But they also always built them on hilltops, right? And so they were these stairs to the sky. So you climb up to the top, you can see you can see the whole jungle. I mean, you are well above tree line, right? By like 100 feet or more. I mean, you're looking out over the whole region of that part of Guatemala. I mean, you feel almost airborne.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
Hmm.
I mean, that's like 600 feet. Because a meter's about 3 feet.
Yeah. Well, all right, hold on. This is where we need our research assistant.
Oh yeah, we
I
need
hope I'm getting
Jamie.
this right. Yeah, we need wouldn't that be funny if that went into the culture as like yeah, we need our Jamie, like,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 we need our Jamie. Just that, like, hey, pull that up real quick. Um, yeah, yeah, it was a great experience. I will say that the Mayans were a culture I had no real familiarity with, and it made me very curious to learn more.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to be able to do a little more research on them before I go back.
Mm.
Um, yeah, yeah, and well worth the visit, and really a very affordable country. I mean, um, I think you could go down there and for five five or $600, you could probably stay almost a week, in basic tourist accommodations and stay fairly comfortable. So yeah, I had a good time. There was one hotel that rented out jet skis, and that if one chose to jet ski, that could eat through your budget pretty
Wow.
quick. I figured I can probably jet ski in America. I can't go to Mayan ruins in America.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I chose the Mayan ruins, but man, I
Yeah.
was tempted. Those guys, there's a bunch of Australian guys. There's like five or six of them, and they all rented jet skis and they're out on the lake and they were having a good time. I was like, man,
Next
those
time.
Australians are doing it right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they do.
Yeah. So no, it was a great trip. Like I said, hope to go back. Yeah, we'll just basically have to wait for the weather to cool down there because they're going into their summer. I mean, it's
Mm.
about to be real. They were telling I keep up with a few of the people from the school, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're in swimsuits now. Like we're just hanging out by the lake and catching rays." I'm like,
Man,
sounds good.
in February.
And it's February. Yeah, yeah.
How do they survive the summer?
How do they? Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, yeah. Because I think it's usually over 100 during the day. And because of that humidity, it doesn't cool down all that
Oh,
much,
yeah.
right? Like here in Wyoming, it can be over 100 during the day, but it'll drop 20, sometimes even 30 degrees at night. So like our nights here are super pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but yeah, that humidity, it sticks to you. So
Yeah, it does.
yeah. So yeah, man, it was a great trip. I'd go back. I'd love to go back, explore
Mhm.
some more. They were saying it was interesting. Like the first 3 days, like I'd do my classes and then kind of hang out, do my homework or whatever. I just didn't really have that much to do. It was funny, like the last 3 days, it was just starting to get to the point where I knew more people. There was more activities going on. I had started to make some connections. It was like, oh shoot, like I'm not even sure I'm gonna have time for it all,
Mm,
right? And then like keeping up with people, they're like, oh yeah, when you come back, you gotta like, you could teach English for an hour to like school kids. You could go volunteer here. Like you got to go see this. Like maybe stay in the village so you can, rather than just be with a host family, you can be more like a host village, right? Where yeah, obviously you're still staying with a family, but you get to know more people around the area. I'm like, dang, like you go back, you could probably just start to make more connections. Yeah, really have a good time. So yeah, let
yeah.
me know if you're busy. Yeah, if you're not too busy in October, you're looking for something to do.
Sounds like a fun time.
Yeah, man. Yeah, yeah. So, but speaking of next time, you probably have to hit the road, right?
Yeah. Should go up here.
Yeah, it's another work night.
Yeah. It
So,
was really fun having you back on, and
thanks, man.
glad
Yeah,
that you'll be part of the team now.
I'm really looking forward to
Yeah.
it. Yeah, I mean,
So,
like I said, there's already a list going through my head of everyone I'd love to get on here and have a chat with. Like I said, Lander's just got such an interesting community.
it really
So
does.
yeah.
Yeah.
So well, good. Yeah. Well, no, it's an absolute pleasure to be back, and thank you for having me. And
Yeah.
look forward to the next one.
It was a really wonderful conversation, and a lot of things I'm going to think about from this. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, just to our listeners, thank you again for tuning in to the Green Dragon podcast. Hope you enjoyed this conversation. Um, I will be bringing you some really fun future conversations with some guests, and yeah, um, I'll do my best to do the aid and fill in. But he's always saying that you know it's important to fight for what we believe in and stay true. Um, so feel free to see our smaller content on our channels. We got Instagram, Twitter, um, YouTube, Rumble. Um, feel free to leave a comment, review, subscribe. Always appreciated. And until next time, be safe, stay strong, and most importantly, be a good American. God bless.